The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast.
We study the Bible and we talk about it.
Not all of us are of the same faith.
And one of us doesn't have a faith.
But we still love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
Hey, everybody. I don't usually bother to mention this stuff, but if you hang around after the very end of the episode, Rick, Tiziana, and I, but mostly the Ricks, do a little recap of their time at the conference at Berean Bible Church in Virginia. Enjoy, and thank you.
Welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. I'm Rick Welch, and to my left, oh, can you believe it?
Ooh.
Can you believe it?
Hey.
Can't.
Billy,
I cannot.
Billy, I Candy Kimsey.
Like a jelly bean, because when I was at Myrtle Beach, I realized that I'm a jelly belly Billy. I saw some pictures like I was out in the ocean. I thought I had jellyfish on my kidneys. Like, what's going on right here?
Yeah,
I have
the man handles, baby.
I have a body mullet. The front looks okay, but what the hell's wrong with your back?
Body mullet.
So my kidneys are pregnant. But anyway, so I'm a jelly belly. So anyway, I'm a backwards jelly belly.
That back there makes me look like I've got a rear end.
Oh, okay, a double butt.
Listen,
yeah.
No,
Billy,
that makes me
you are
actually look
such
like I got
eye
one.
candy that I got a sugar rush now just looking at you, bro.
I'm just thinking of all the kidneys you could sell.
Yeah, that's true too. So,
Man, and sitting right next to him, having a hot flash,
She's thinking about really fat
is
kidneys.
Tiziana, Mom So Hot, Severse. How are you, Mom and So Hot today?
I wore my bedroom slippers. I
Did you really?
legitimately, yeah, I drove and am currently wearing bedroom slippers.
Yes. We normally say Mom So Hard, but she's Mom So Hot.
Today,
Gotta.
I am also perimenopausal, so it's accurate.
There you go. Behind the glass is Rocket Man Andy Bishop. And to my right, Rick Big Daddy Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Can you make that super bassy? Can you make that?
Yes,
can you put
yes,
that,
I
please?
can.
But what I really want, Andy, is I want you to bounce that back and forth between the speakers. Please do it again. Do it really deep, and then I want you to do it. Okay, Andy?
Yeah, I put the pan on the latest Alan Bondar one.
Oh yeah.
Because we talked about
Let's
it.
pan it again.
I'm going to do that one in reverse.
Yeah, let's do that.
yeah. That Kool-Aid guy, I don't know. He's a creeper. Okay.
Hey, I drive a van for a really good reason.
Do you guys remember on Family Guy how the Kool-Aid guy always like popped in out of nowhere? Did you ever watch that show?
And it was always never mind. I won't say that.
Okay, yeah, please don't.
It was always to the kids.
Huh?
It was always popping up on kids.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I just remember the episode where somebody busted into the Kool-Aid guy's house, and he's sitting there going, "Wow, so this is what this feels like." So that was funny. Anyway.
That's awesome. Guys, the title of this episode is very funny. You ready? The title of this episode is Maher-Shalal-Hash-Who? Exactly. And this is the Burrows' take on the virgin birth.
Ooh.
It's not Christmas time, folks, but it's almost Christmas in July. Actually, maybe by the time this comes out, it will be. But you guys know the famous verse, "Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and
He shall be called Emmanuel."
Called Emmanuel. We know that at Christmas time all the time. We use it because we talk about the virgin birth. But the thing that we're actually going to talk about tonight is twofold. One, there is a near time fulfillment, and the name of that child was not Emmanuel. The name was Maher-Shalal-Hash-Who.
All right, okay, near time fulfillment. What does that mean?
So in other words, when Isaiah said these words, later in the Gospels, when Matthew says that Jesus' birth was to fulfill the prophet Isaiah, that was 750 years prior to his birth. So it's a long-term prophecy, okay? A near term means that when Isaiah actually uttered it, it happened within 2 years of when he said it. So it actually had a fulfillment, but there was a much greater fulfillment in Jesus later. That's what the gospel writers are saying. Okay. So we're going to get into that, baby.
Some of the discussions that's recently been had, especially at the Berean Bible Conference, was talking about some of the Old Testament prophecies, how there were near fulfillments in the Old Testament that were later greater fulfillments that were done through Jesus.
Yes. All of this was really inspired by Bob Cruikshank's talk that was at the Berean Bible Church Conference, because he showed several, he talked about one in particular about Zerubbabel,
Yes.
about a near time fulfillment. And he was like, before you fast forward to 70 AD or the birth of Christ, we need to see if there was a fulfillment, because you have to be able to justify what the prophet said.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if he said it and it didn't come to pass in his lifetime, he was a false prophet.
He was a false prophet.
So that
Yeah,
means that
for
those
sure.
prophecies that you hear about Jesus,
Yeah.
they had a near time fulfillment.
They had to.
That's right.
I'm so ready for this conversation. You
Good.
guys can't see this. Nobody listening can see this, but I have like all of my books. I brought
And
all of
tell
my
them
books.
which book you actually have
Oh,
there.
well, okay. So
She's a
in
librarian today.
addition to my Bible, yeah, even hotter.
Woo!
Yeah,
I'm talking
in
about-
addition to my Bible,
Going to that library.
in addition to my Bible. So it's interesting that, Rick, you wanted to talk about this today, because I just recently in the mail finally received my copy of The Bible Says So, What We Get Right and Wrong About Scripture's Most Controversial Issues, written by none other than Dan McClellan.
Yes, and if you guys don't know who that is, go back and listen, because
Yeah.
we interviewed him here, and you did on Notes from the Other Side
I
as well.
did, and we talk about him all the time. And
Yep.
he wore Andy's shirt in one of his TikToks the other day.
He did.
He
That was
did.
very
Did he?
cool.
Yeah, he did.
yeah.
He wore a Giraffe Studio
He said
shirt.
my fit is a Giraffe Studio shirt.
in lovely Hendersonville, North Carolina.
Yeah,
Yep, he said the
What?
whole
yeah,
thing.
it's very cool.
Damn,
Yeah,
I
very
know.
flattering.
Dan.
Thank
He
did
you,
a Burroughs
Dan. I
shirt.
love you.
I've seen the Burroughs. I didn't see the Andy one. I wear the Andy shirt all the time.
Yeah.
Those are comfy shirts. I
They
get
are
comfy
very
shirts
nice.
on purpose.
Yeah, he wore the Burroughs one when he was at the Society of
Bam!
Biblical Literature conference in California.
I am wearing my Giraffe Studio
I
shirt,
see it.
As he
Right
shows
now.
his belly,
Yeah.
he loves it.
and I am showing you my navel.
That's all right. That's good. It's getting hotter and hotter in here.
What other
so
books you
take
got up
off
in here?
all your clothes. Anyway, so that's the book I have, the first book that I brought, and then I also brought my. I almost do everything. I start everything from my Chapman and Coogan, a brief introduction to the Old Testament. It's actually like a seminary book.
Do you remember when I borrowed that for
yeah,
a year?
yeah, for a really long time. It's fine.
I had that book forever. She's like,
It's
hey,
fine.
you think you could bring that book back? And I was like, yeah, I'll get it back to you.
But what's really fascinating is in that book. So this was one of my seminary books, and again, it's like a basic brief introduction.
Yeah.
And but it's got a lot of like the time frames and everything. A lot of times when I'm trying to remember a time frame or a map or like what archaeological evidence lines up, I go right here. But on page 285, box 18.2, the identification of Emmanuel, I have it highlighted in my book, and it says, "What?" And it literally says, it is more likely then that Emmanuel was the son of Isaiah and his wife.
That's right. We're going to get into that.
I know.
I love it.
And I'm ready.
What's the other book?
My Bible.
No.
Oh, the third one?
Yeah. What
Oh,
was
the fourth one? This is, okay.
Oh, the fourth one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fourth
7,
one.
8, 9.
This is
10.
the prophetic literature, an introduction, again, by David L. Peterson. This book is only for the most nerdiest of nerds because it will put you to sleep. But it's an introduction to prophetic literature in the Hebrew Bible and putting it in the context of how the Hebrew people like thought about prophecy and when it all kind of within the history of Israel, when prophetic literature became a thing. And we've talked about this because people had to be able to write. It wasn't until the establishment of the monarchy that any of this prophetic stuff started really being written down and happening, because you had to have finances. You had to have people who had the luxury of whose job was going to be sitting down and writing things down
Right.
and keeping track of stuff.
Mhm.
And so, but anyway,
Yeah. So
that's all my books.
this
Sweet.
actually, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I said sweet.
Oh, this actually comes from an article that I put out on my Patreon page, guys. So if you want, this was one of those rare ones when I put it out, it was free to the public. So you can, if you just join my Patreon, you'll get a lot of the free stuff that we put out. But if you don't, then suck on that. Hate that for you. So Isaiah 7:14, it's going to sound like I'm reading because I am. I'm actually sharing stuff from my article, but then I want to talk about it. And I want you to interrupt me if something pops in your head. Isaiah 7:14 is one of those verses that shows up everywhere, from Christmas pageants to theological showdowns, and everyone seems to have a take on it. Matthew quotes it to proclaim the virgin birth of Jesus, and while skeptics raise eyebrows about ancient prophecy accuracy, I said it as if it was a question, but I shouldn't have. Before we jump ahead to nativity scenes and angel choirs, we need to ask a very Jewish question. What did this mean then?
Mm-hmm.
What did it mean to them? Because this verse didn't float down from the clouds one December night in Bethlehem. It was spoken during a full-blown political crisis in the 8th century BC when King Ahaz of Judah was shaking in his royal boots.
Mm-hmm.
2 enemy kings were closing in, and God sent Isaiah to deliver a promise and a sign. A young woman would bear a son named Emmanuel, and before that child could grow up, the threat would be gone. And that's what this is all about, guys. So we're going to get into a rigorous verse by verse walkthrough of Isaiah 7. And
There's my Mr. Miyagi hands.
There it is.
I'm excited.
It's a scholarly attempt, thanks to Burroughs University. Yeah,
like
exactly. But it's going to be lighthearted. All right. So before we talk about virgins, babies, and prophetic signs, we got to talk about politics. Because Isaiah 7 doesn't start in a maternity ward. It starts in a war room.
You're a really good writer.
You like that?
Yeah, I did. I liked it a lot.
I actually like your blog a lot. I love your blog.
I haven't done anything.
What's the name of it? My boyfriend's ex-girlfriend?
Well, it was my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, but what I've done is I've just kind of coalesced everything onto one website. It's the nftos.net. It's my notes from the other side page. So now the blog and everything is kind of like all in one spot because I have too many like started and then stopped things.
You guys should go read it. It is, you're a great writer.
Thank you.
It's so fun. And I'm like, man, you got a good mind on you. That's for sure. All right. So here's the setting. You got 2 kings and 1 terrified king. So Isaiah chapter 7, verse 1. In the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not yet mount an attack against it. All right. And also in verse 6, it says, Ahaz, the king of Judah, finds himself in the middle of a Oh, I said that wrong. I'm sorry. Ahaz, who is the king of Judah. Do you understand the difference between Judah and Israel, Andy?
Actually, no.
Okay. So after King Solomon, the entire nation of Israel split in 2. Between his sons, Jeroboam and Rehoboam. Okay?
The Israelite version of the Great Coffee debacle.
The coffee controversy of 2010.
Which would be punishment to Solomon.
Yeah.
Solomon, it was punishment to him that the nation would be split through
So
his
what,
sons.
in essence, what happens is the northern tribes, the 10 tribes, the northern ones, are considered they're called the kingdom of Israel. Okay? And the capital early on, I believe, is Shechem. And then it eventually becomes Samaria.
Yeah. I said that like I know. Did you
pretty
hear
sure.
how confident I was
You're
in
like,
that?
yep.
I didn't actually know that at
just
all.
like,
I
yeah.
just assumed that Rick had done his research.
I did. And by the way, if I'm wrong, I will not do an oops episode. It's up to you to go look.
Yeah, go figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not notes from the other side. I'm not going to be right.
Comment.
I'm not going to correct
Leave a comment
myself
in the
on
comment
air.
section.
Okay.
No. And then you had the southern part, which was the kingdom of Judah. And so you had 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin. Okay. And a little bit of another little one, but really it's about the 2. So the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel have split. In 722 BC, the Assyrian Empire takes the northern kingdom and they leave the southern kingdom. Okay. And then it's later, and I think, is it 589 or 539?
Definitely 539.
Yeah. Whenever
Sorry.
Babylon comes and takes out
539.
539 BC.
539.
So that's whenever the kingdom of,
See, I told you.
I feel like it's 586.
I don't know if it's maybe
think it's-
it is because 539 is when Cyrus the Great takes over.
That's right,
So
586.
my brain was sitting here trying to do the math. I'm like, no. 539 is when in Daniel
Yes.
when the kingdom of Babylon is destroyed and
Yeah.
the Medo-Persian Empire begins and the Israelites are sent back.
That's
so it's
exactly right.
586.
So then, Andy, the kingdom of Judah is taken and brought into exile by the Babylonians. Okay, so that's the 2.
Okay. Yeah,
deals
no,
with-
I didn't know
So
that.
King Ahaz is the king of Judah
Ahaz
in this story.
is such a weird name to me.
It's a great name.
Every time you say it in my head, I have thought you said Ahab wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's dumb. But it's literally every time my brain's like, you mean Ahab?
Yeah. So, all right. So here we are. Ahaz, the king of Judah, finds himself in the middle of a geopolitical storm. The northern kingdom of Israel has teamed up with Syria, also known as Aram or Aram, and they've set their sights on Judah. Why? Because they want Ahaz to join their anti-Assyrian coalition. They're trying to save themselves. So they're trying to take Ahaz and be like, join us and fight. But he refuses.
I'm a Jew. You're a Jew. I'm getting punched. It's like all Jews are getting punched here, guy. Come on.
So he's going to refuse, and they decide to replace him altogether. So they want to depose him as king and replace him with somebody else who would agree with them. Kind of like what America does to other countries.
We may have been involved in that.
We try it. It never seems to work out so well.
We did it a couple times good in South America. I mean, good for us. I wouldn't say good overall.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Ahaz isn't really exactly known for his spiritual fortitude, and this situation has him panicking. So in verse 2 of chapter 7, it says, when the house of David was told, Syria is in league with Ephraim, the heart of Ahaz and the heart of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. So basically, the translation is Ahaz is sweating bullets. That's what it means,
funny.
okay? So the Davidic line is about to be overthrown, or at least it seems like that. So God sends the prophet Isaiah to meet Ahaz and deliver a message of assurance. And here's what he tells him in verse 4 of chapter 7. Be careful, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint. So why? Because the two enemy kings are, in God's eyes, just two smoldering stumps of firebrands. They look threatening, but they're burned out. Their plan to dethrone Ahaz will not succeed. In fact, their own kingdoms won't even survive much longer. So Isaiah then makes a powerful appeal. Listen to this in verse 9. If you are not firm in faith, you will not be firm at all. Now he's talking about faith here. So this is the heart of the matter of this story. Ahaz is standing at a crossroads. So will he trust God, or will he make a deal with the Assyrians? A move that might save him politically in the short term, but will backfire in the long run. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. Ahaz takes the Assyrian option. Okay? So, which is weird because it's kind of like trying to escape a fox, but you're hugging a bear. So God, listen to this. God, in a stunning act of mercy, offers Ahaz a sign to reassure him. Any sign. Heaven or earth, dealer's choice. Listen how big this offer is in verse 11 of chapter 7. Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven. Like, you can ask anything you want. As deep as Sheol, as high as heaven. Like, anything is on the table for you, bro. Ask, and I'm going to give it. I'll give it to you. But instead, Ahaz plays this pious card. Verse 12 says, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test. But see, God had already said, put me to the test. So when God says it, you can. Any other time you shouldn't. So which sounds righteous, but is actually a dodge on Ahaz's part. He doesn't want a sign from Yahweh because he's already made up his mind. He's going to go with Assyria. And Isaiah is not amused by this. So in verse 13, he says, is it too little for you to weary men that you weary my God also? And then we come to the moment that sets off centuries of theological debate.
That's funny. Is it too little to weary men that you must weary God also? That's a burn. That's like Shakespearean.
Yeah,
It's good.
It's a good
That's
burn.
a good burn.
Jesus says it too. He's like, oh my God, how long do I have to sit here and listen to you guys bitch all the time? Like, you know what I mean?
That is like kind of a Shakespearean-esque burn. I mean, I know that's probably first chronologically, but it's got that same sort of like understated venom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's where we arrive at what I believe is one of the most quoted, argued over, and misunderstood verses in the Old Testament, which is verse 14. And this is how it goes. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. He's talking directly to King Ahaz. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son and shall call his name Emmanuel.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Go right ahead.
What version are you reading?
ESV.
I'm reading the New Revised Standard Version.
Okay, what does it say?
Would you like to hear it?
I would.
New Revised Standard, because there are two sticking points in this verse.
All right.
There are two that deserve.
You're talking about the words?
And something else.
Okay.
To conceive or has conceived.
Okay.
There's also a verbiage there in the Hebrew that got messed with.
Okay.
Okay. The NRSV version says, all right, I'm trying to navigate the microphone and my actual giant Bible because I brought my actual Bible. Okay. So, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child and shall bear a son and shall name him Emmanuel.
Okay.
Because there are two differences between that and that. And I don't know if you want to keep going, but I'm just going to point that out.
No, that's fine. That's fine because I'm actually going to get into the words here in just a second.
Yes, let's
because
do
he
it.
doesn't actually say virgin.
No.
He does not.
No.
That's
Not
that's
in
one that
Isaiah.
I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got.
Were you going to say
I'm
something,
gonna
Rick?
get all my shit.
Well, I love the CSB version.
What does it say?
And it gives a notation for both parts, actually, because the actual verse in the CSB says, see, the virgin will conceive. But the notation, if you tap it on your app, it says, or the virgin is pregnant, will.
Ah.
So it helps. I love this because it gives all the notations for the different versions.
Yes.
So, so now it seems like it's sort of in conflict with itself.
Well, the biggest thing is whenever we read those verses, we automatically bounce right to the nativity story.
100%.
We always do.
Yes.
Because
Right,
that's what Christians do anyway.
Well, I mean, it's a part of we talked earlier in a follow-up part. It's the Mandela effect.
Yeah, it's just the way that we go. It's really not Mandela. It's just what you do because that's what we know. We always talk about, well, I guess it would be Mandela if you're misinterpreting it. So we have to remember that this is being spoken to the king of Judah in the middle of a crisis in the 8th century BC. And Isaiah says this sign is for him. It's not for Joseph or Mary.
Right.
It's not for shepherds. This is for Ahaz. In its original
That's some
context.
good audience relevance right
That's
there.
right. So let's get into the details. And before I go too far, did you have anything on the words Alma versus Betula, or do you want me to cover that?
Oh, go ahead. I'm with you on it. I'm looking right at it.
Do you want to talk about it?
Do you
wanna
want
read
me to read? Let me read a little chunk from Dan McClellan's
Go right
book.
ahead.
Because what we're going to be talking about here is what my translation says the young woman, and your translation says the virgin.
Yes.
Okay. So Dan is also an RSV reader,
Okay.
which I did not follow him. I was reading it first, just come to find out.
Okay. He's following
So
you.
I just want to say.
Got it.
So my translation, this is Dan talking now. My translation of this verse differs from the KJV in a couple of significant ways. To begin with, the KJV has virgin. I have translated it as young woman. The word in Hebrew is alma, which just means young woman. It refers to a woman who is of a marriageable age, but has no reference in and of itself to her marriage status or to her sexual experience. It's just a way to refer to a woman that's around a certain age. There is nothing supernatural or prophetic about acknowledging that a young woman has become pregnant.
That's exactly that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. But there's also another interesting piece,
Betula.
which is the verb.
No.
You're in a different.
You
so
go
now
ahead.
you're going to add a thing.
You want to go? You go ahead and say what you need to say.
Well,
and then
okay.
I'll bring. Yep. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so then this is the other piece of it. So
All right.
yours said will become pregnant, but mine said she already is pregnant.
Yes.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's going to become pregnant, that period of time is absolutely and utterly unknowable between now and when the pregnancy happens. But when someone is pregnant, brother, there's a timer on that.
Yeah.
And it's going to go off.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's pretty cut and dry when that's going to happen, right? It's a time frame reference.
My opinion, though, of this is that the later verses will tell you that she was not pregnant yet.
Okay.
And I'll get into that later, but that's okay. Keep going.
Okay. So, but here's the thing. So back to Dan. The second main difference is that my translation says the young woman is pregnant while the JKV says she shall conceive. In Hebrew, there's no verb connected with the word for young woman. There's just an adjective that means pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no verb to be or has been or will be or whatever. So it could be the young woman is pregnant or the young woman will become pregnant. In Hebrew, you don't have to use a to be verb. It's kind of like in Spanish, right? Like you don't always have to, if I want to say yo quiero versus tú quieres, I don't always have to say yo or tú because the verb itself is conjugated and tells me who I'm talking to. If I just say quiero, I'm talking about myself.
For some reason, I want a taco.
I know.
Taco Bell.
Right.
That's Yo Quiero,
I
Taco
know.
Bell, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he's
or
not
a Chihuahua.
the particular thing he's talking about
Taco
here.
Bell commercials make me want chihuahuas.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so
Okay. I don't mean, it's obviously not exactly the same because it's a different language and it's an ancient thing. But what he's saying is that in Hebrew, you don't have to use it to be verb. You can just have a subject and put some kind of predication next to it, and the to be verb is just assumed. With this particular adjective, it almost always refers to a pregnancy that is already underway from the perspective of the speaker. So that's one of those things where Dan, in his knowledge of Hebrew and his reading of ancient Hebrew, not just in the Bible, but other poetry books and all kinds of other stuff, he's saying that when we see these two things together, the overwhelming majority of the time, it means this person's already pregnant.
Right. And if anybody is listening and thinking, well, then what's the miracle? Well, you have to know the rest of the prophecy in order to know what the miracle actually was.
Right.
Looking at
Did you have something else?
Well, I mean, that's just...
Sorry, Rick.
Yeah.
I'll let you.
no, you're good.
Well, yeah, I mean, and he says with this particular adjective, it always refers to a pregnancy that is already underway. It can sometimes be used to refer to an imminent pregnancy that is just about to take place.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like if you're watching your clock, it's going to be next week.
Yeah.
It's the magical week of ovulation,
Right, yep.
But it's
Giggity.
usually like now or
What'd you say?
whatever.
Giggity.
Oh, I thought you said guilty, and I was like,
guilty.
keeping an eye on it.
No, I'm
Keeping an eye on it.
I'm
Billy?
retired.
Giggity.
I'm
You got
retired.
You got your period tracker app up.
Yeah. Everybody knows Billy really keeps track of his ovulation.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right. I mean, it's important, right? So in any case, it definitely is not referring to a woman becoming pregnant in the neighborhood of 700 years later. Either way, you slice that cake, it's talking about something that's about to happen or that is like currently underway.
That's
like
right.
an imminent project.
It is imminent. Yeah. What do you got, Rick?
No, it's good on the part that she's talking about as far as the pregnancy is concerned, because I think from the text we look at that she's possibly already pregnant.
Yeah.
Because conceiving is the term that's present tense. It means that she's already in the process of being in birthing. I mean, she's already got a child. The when you look
Buns
at
in the oven.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So looking at Alma, I'm just on the speculation part because I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but looking at the definition that she's already read, I'm curious if the virgin part means that maybe she was not married.
Well, I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into that here in just a minute.
Sorry,
No, it's fine.
jumped ahead.
I didn't give you guys any notes, so this is all on you. It's all good.
Because
You
it's
ready?
being virgin young woman of marriable age, maid or newly married. So if you kind of meld all those definitions together, the tense would be that maybe she's not married and was pregnant out of wedlock.
See, yeah, I think that's a little bit getting in the weeds just because as we keep going on, like the point of the prophecy is to provide a time frame.
Right.
Because then he's like, before the child old enough to know good or evil. All right. My 2-year-old doesn't know that yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
she still has to be told multiple times when you're hitting your sister and she's saying to you, stop, stop, stop. It's rude. But now my 4-year-old, she's starting to really get a concept of it. Like if you know anything about toddlers, there literally is like a period of time where their brain starts to go, oh, that's mean.
Yeah.
Isn't it? But they don't get that for a while. So if you're talking about someone who is pregnant or about to become pregnant and before the child knows good and evil, it's like, listen, you just got to hang on for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
Is that's the entire point.
And we haven't even got
It's
to
a
that yet.
time stamp.
Right. We haven't even got to that part about knowing good and
Sorry.
evil yet. No, it's okay.
all good.
I'm just saying, but that is the miracle.
I did take a Ritalin in the car on the way here so that I wouldn't be so
I
extra.
wonder if that was a generation.
I'm trying.
You're doing it as always. You're doing amazing. All right. So listen, here's one of those things that we should try. That word Alma. Let's just look at the other places. It's only mentioned 7 times in the Bible,
Oh,
and
give it to me.
none of them are a virgin.
Look at that.
All right. Genesis 24:43 with Rebecca at the well. Exodus 2:8, Moses' sister Miriam. Psalm 68:25 talks about young maidens playing tambourines at a procession. Proverbs 30:19, the way of a man and an alma, which is a poetic euphemism, but vague. Song of Songs 1:3, therefore the alamat, which is the plural version of alma. Love you, which implies youthful desirability. Later on in chapter 6, verse 8 of Song of Songs, 60 queens and a countless alamat. Again, it's the young, youthful desirability. And then here in Isaiah 7:14, none of them actually point to a virgin ever.
But,
Well, gosh, Rick, how'd we get virgin then?
but
Because,
Or are you going to go there? I'm trying to volley one up to
but
you.
what?
from what it seems that all those women were not married.
Yeah, they weren't. They were unmarried. But
Yes.
I'm not done. I see where you're heading, but you're not going to get what you want.
I understand.
You're
I
not.
hate to break it to you, Rick. Just because you're not married doesn't mean you're
Yeah,
a
it's Hellenistic.
virgin.
That's exactly.
It's Hellenistic.
I mean, I don't know how they do it in South Carolina, but in North Carolina, it does not mean that you're married. All right, so There is actually
Just if you're
another,
cousins.
Listen,
Right.
there's another word. The more technical Hebrew word for virgin is betula, which
Okay.
explicitly refers to a woman who has not had sexual relations whatsoever and can be found in Genesis 24:16 and Leviticus 21:13.
It's only two
Also,
times.
who said Miriam wasn't married?
Nobody. It
Nobody
doesn't-
said that.
Maybe it does say it in the text, but I don't remember.
Well, I mean, even so, like one of the things that isn't always necessarily said is when people's partners died, which happened literally all the time, especially if you're talking about a group of people who were enslaved for X amount of years in a brutal before the Exodus. There was like all this brutal murder of firstborns and like all this fighting because it was like a time of tension. So like for Miriam to be a young woman doesn't necessarily mean that she wasn't married. We just don't hear about her husband. We don't
Right.
know. I don't know. And B, it doesn't mean that she wasn't married at some point, but maybe her husband passed away.
You don't know.
We don't know.
We don't have a clue.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
But would that tense be in the word they used for her anyway?
Well, what I'm saying is if she was a virgin and that was relevant to the story, they would have used the word for virgin, which is what Rick is saying.
Gotcha.
Listen,
Gotcha.
all I want to point out
Sorry.
is that in Exodus chapter 2, that Moses' sister Miriam is called an Alma when she speaks to Pharaoh's daughter. So she is a young maiden. It's not even worrying about whether she's a virgin or not. She's a young woman.
Yes.
She's young.
Right.
And her little brother, she's trying to save his life.
Yes.
That's all it's, they're not worried about her sexuality at the time.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's irrelevant to the
No,
story.
it's
Absolutely.
just she was a young woman.
Good.
So why, if Isaiah was talking about a virgin, he could have easily used Betula,
Right.
if that's what the sign was meant to emphasize.
That word was used back when? Betula was used when?
It was in Genesis
All right. So the word
and
existed
Leviticus. Yeah, it
for
existed.
his
Yeah,
vocabulary.
the
knew how to
Hebrew
use it.
people had a different word for virgin
Exactly, so-
versus young woman, which is not the same for the Greek.
We
Right.
talked about the creation of certain words. So
Yeah.
that word was in existence, so he could have definitely
He could have
used it.
absolutely used that word.
100%.
All right. So anybody who's listening to this and getting upset,
Sorry.
be like, but wait, it's a virgin. No, it's not. In the Old Testament, it's not a virgin. I'm not saying anything about the New Testament yet, but I am telling you that the Old Testament
Yeah.
is not talking about a virgin. It's talking about a young woman. Okay. Now, here we go. Isaiah could have used Betula if the sign were meant to emphasize biological virginity, but he didn't. Instead, he uses Alma, likely referring to a real, present tense young woman, someone Isaiah and Ahaz could both point to and say, her.
Right.
Her.
Exactly. Because it's a time statement.
That's right. That's the sign that Isaiah is offering Ahaz, and it's not necessarily miraculous in nature, but it is in time and specificity. That's the beauty of this prophecy. It's not about whether the woman was a virgin. It's about how long this is going to take based on the age of the child.
I'm going to do it. Don't lose faith. Don't lose heart. It's going
Yes.
to take about this long, but trust me, it's going to happen.
Basically, he's saying by the time this child is born and grows up a little, these two kings threatening you will be gone. And it's a prophetic countdown clock, and
So-
it's a test of Ahaz's trust.
Which is always case when God tells something, he tells it and gives a time statement of when it's going to happen.
right.
And he's always telling them to don't worry, it'll happen in this amount of time,
Yeah. So
which is awesome. He's always stating his case.
now
Well,
here's
and-
where it gets. Go ahead.
Well, and it's like, and what's frustrating is like if you can lift a verse out of isolation and make it mean whatever you want. But
Of
if
course.
you keep the prophecy's not done yet,
Right.
Right.
you can keep reading.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
And you know,
Yes.
that's exactly right. And here's the thing, guys. Here's what I hope that you guys get. When you learn how this prophecy was told and how it worked out, you are going to understand even better what Matthew was trying to convey later in the New Testament. But you've got to know its original context, because that's what Jews knew was the original context. There was no New Testament. If for a Jew who just read Matthew, he'd be like, "Oh, this is killer." We
yes.
just
It's a New
hear
York
the
Times
killer part.
bestseller. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's where it gets remarkable. Isaiah doesn't wait long to show who that young woman is. Remember the one that says, "Oh, that's her." Isaiah chapter 8, verse 3. And I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, call his name Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz. Now, many people believe that this is Isaiah's own wife, and I think it is too, and I'll tell you why later. But this prophetess becomes pregnant because he says, I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. In other words, it seems like this is a timeliness. He goes after telling Ahaz to that woman, and then she becomes pregnant. So that could be seen as miraculous.
Yeah. Well, and it also, I mean, like, again, it refers to that timestamp. It's either like right now or like in just a hot minute.
Yeah.
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 Like
and-
it's about to happen.
Yes. All right. So now Isaiah offers a real-time sign.
Although, just to be clear, these dudes, they didn't know anything about ovulation. And they didn't, you know what I mean? Like, no. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think they only knew that someone was pregnant when they'd missed a period.
So they didn't even know kind of in general that there was a fertile period. They didn't even.
No.
Wow.
They knew if you missed a period, you got pregnant. But like they didn't understand the endocrine system and how eggs develop and how do you know what I mean? Like they could look at the moon and they could keep track of their own business and be like, I'm about to do that bleedy thing in a minute. But like we're talking about the 8th century BCE.
You mean you're about to become unclean?
Right.
Oh no, it's bleedy thing.
I'm not talking about Like I'm not talking about like right now where I can like look at a calendar. We know about how it works.
Is
I
that
can
what it
like
says
count
in
it
the
back.
CSB, Rick?
Yeah. So it's like you know he
right there.
It depends on how many times Isaiah's had sex with this. I mean, like if he had sex with her yesterday versus if he has sex with her tomorrow, unless he's like checking her basal temperature and cervical fluids, he's not going to know which time did the deed.
Let me check in the
you know what I mean?
pseudepigraphal book of Isaiah.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
so it's like this
100%.
idea, like, so he went and slept with her and then she conceived. I mean, she might have conceived the last time they had sex. It's just that it was a couple days ago.
Now,
Do you know what I mean?
now she doesn't get the bleedy thing, and then they say, hey, she's conceived.
Oh, that must have been that one time.
Right.
Because I said that thing and then I think we did it.
Yeah.
So like also the way the Hebrew's vague right there, I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because if he's just saying either has become pregnant or is about to become pregnant, it also kind of reflects the fact that like they could draw a general circle around the area.
Yeah.
But they couldn't hit the target like we can now. Like I knew, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
People will say to you, oh, I knew exactly when I got pregnant.
Yeah.
But they also go to a doctor and they get ultrasounds and they have everything checked. And, I don't know exactly how accurate these people's game of darts was.
Right.
In the 8th century BCE.
But what's most important here is that we got to remember that King Ahaz is faced with this terrible, terrible situation, right?
Right.
He's faced with it. And so when somebody comes up and says, well, listen, a woman's going to get pregnant and bear a son.
Yeah.
And he's like, and?
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And?
Yeah.
And the birth of this son.
Is that boy going to be like, come up and give us a nuclear bomb and stuff?
Right.
Like, what is this all about? But see, Isaiah tells him, and then right here, he says,
it's almost a thing to where Jesus says, when you see the leaves of the tree, you know the seasons.
Yeah.
He's telling Isaiah the
Yes.
same thing through the age of this child. Watch this child, and as he grows, and when he gets to be a certain age, is when you're not going to have to worry anymore.
Right.
You're going to go through all this turmoil right now, but have faith.
Right.
Faith is, again, early to believe in things you can't see. He cannot see when they're going to go away.
Yeah.
But he's telling them based on the time of the age of the child.
Yep. I agree. So if Isaiah 7:14 gives us the promise, then Isaiah 8 gives us the package on the doorstep.
Right.
Complete with a very long name tag. And I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, call his name Maher-Shalal-Hash-Who, for before the boy knows how to cry, my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. That's Isaiah chapter 8, verse 3-4. And just like that, there's our answer. So if you want to know who the maiden is, when he calls her the prophetess, and I don't even know how to pronounce it in Hebrew, that's not an everyday title, just so you know. It's very unique. The Hebrew word for prophetess is the feminine form of nabi, meaning someone who speaks on behalf of God. She's a feminine woman who speaks on behalf of God.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say that again?
Yes,
She's
you can.
a feminine woman who speaks on behalf of God.
Prophetesses were
Exactly
a normal
right.
and regular
and they
thing.
were in the New Testament as well.
Absolutely.
Right? So when you think that these women need to be quiet, you need to read your Bible and understand it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got to say about that.
You mean to
Bam.
tell me Paul doesn't overrule it?
Paul does not overrule it. If you can use the context in which Paul speaks, then you can see what he's talking about to a specific church in a specific time, to a specific
Audience
person.
relevance.
But he also says things to Timothy, and I get it, But I'm sorry, prophetesses weren't being quiet. They were speaking on behalf of God.
Absolutely.
And not just to the kids
Yep.
and not just to the wives. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm not sorry.
I'm not either. All right. It's notable that she's introduced with a definite article, the prophetess, implying she's a known figure, not just a random character. Most scholars believe she is Isaiah's wife, largely because Isaiah says, I went to the prophetess and she conceived and bore a son.
I mean, that would seem most
because the grammar in the Hebrew is personal and direct. He doesn't say a prophetess or someone else's prophetess. It's almost like he's taking a possessive context by going to her, almost like we would say, and then he knew her, or he went into her, or goes into her. That's kind of the idea. He went and had sex with his wife, and then she conceived and bore a son.
Whom he refers to as the prophetess. I love that too. Like he doesn't just say my wife. He's like, he understands she has a higher calling than that.
What are you showing me, Rick?
Well, it's in verse 3 and 8. It says, then I was then intimate with the prophetess.
Well, that's coming from the CSB, correct?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's the way that they're seeing it. All right, so let's talk about that name, Maher-Shalal-Hash what?
Boss hog.
Hash-Baz, good job.
Yes.
Here's what it means. His name means quick to the plunder, swift to the spoil.
I stand by boss hog.
Yep, you like that better. It's not exactly the kind of name that you'd find on a keychain in a Judean
And
gift
they were
shop.
getting busy in the boar's nest.
Yeah. The name is not sentimental. It's actually strategic. It's a prophetic warning encoded in a birth certificate.
They did that all the time.
All the time.
Prophets did that all the time. Gave their kids names
Yes.
that were like, it must have, you talk about being a pastor's kid. It must have sucked being a prophet's kid.
Think about it.
I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they're giving these kids names and Israel shall be torn to shreds and stuff like that. Like, it's
Your
wild.
Now
name
go to your room, two dogs a humping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, if you were,
Your name is like, and then people shall suffer and die.
yeah. If you were unfortunate enough to be born to a prophet, you better watch out. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're just like, could you please just call me like
Dave.
Dave? Yeah.
You ever make something so good, people start interrogating you like, what's in this? Did you make this from scratch? Where did you learn to cook like that? And I just smile because deep down, I know the truth. I didn't level up my skills. I leveled up my seasoning. It's called my secret ingredient. Let's start with the MVP. Everything. This blend, it's the Thor of the spice rack. Chicken. Glorious. Roasted veggies? I ate those on purpose. Yes, I sprinkled it on popcorn and suddenly became everyone's favorite movie host. And to be honest with you, I might have even tried it on possum. Yeehaw. Do I regret it? Of course. But only because I didn't notice that the tail was still on it. Rookie mistake. Everything just works. It's like confidence in a jar. Shake it on, and suddenly you're plating like you're on a cooking show without breaking a sweat. Then there's Steakhouse. This one's bold, smoky, and, like me, a bit dramatic. It makes burgers taste like they've been grilled by someone with strong opinions and great taste. I've used it on steak, mushrooms, even sweet potato fries. And every single time someone says, wait, did you marinate this for, 48 hours? Nope, just shook it on, flipped it, and took all the credit. Last week, my cousin asked me for a recipe, and I said, sure, I'll leave it to you in my will. So if you want to rule the kitchen without lifting a finger, go to mysecretblends.com. That's mysecretblends.com. And don't forget to use code BURROWS for 20% off your first order. Shake it, serve it, smile sweetly when they ask, and say, shh, it's my secret.
So God tells Isaiah to write the name before the child is even conceived in verse 1. And it's a banner headline. It's like a divine telegram, okay? The plunder's coming fast. The judgment is speeding towards you. Get ready, Ahaz. Your enemies are about to fall. That's literally what this kid's name should mean for Ahaz. It's the equivalent of naming your kid Incoming Airstrike Johnson. So if we're being honest, somewhere in the hills of Judah, there's probably a burro scratching his head, thinking, Maher-Shalal what now? That's a long name. Okay. And most of us who read the Bible barely know how to pronounce Zechariah. So there's a lot in these names. We have to take time to understand what these prophets are saying. So when we think, oh, this is damaging my faith because it says Emmanuel, why is it saying Maher? There's a reason. We're going to get into that. The name wasn't just a mouthful, it was actually a message, and it carried weight in a world where names weren't just labels, they were prophecies, just like Tiziana just said. So
that would be rough to have a name like that.
I know, right? Here's what Isaiah says about the child's purpose. Before the boy knows how to cry, Mama or Daddy, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Israel. So in other words, the child's developmental milestone is the ticking clock. By the time he can say Mama or Papa, the northern threat will be wiped out. In modern terms, that's about 1 to 2 years. And historically, that's exactly what happened.
Mine says the spoil of Samaria will be carried away by the king of Assyria.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
What does yours say?
It said that. The wealth of Damascus before the king of Assyria.
I thought you said before the king of Israel. And
No,
I was
the
like,
king of Assyria.
whoa. Okay. Whew. Sorry. I was like, whoa. That's a big difference.
So Damascus or Syria fell to Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria in 732 BC. Samaria or Israel fell shortly after in 722 BC. Ahaz was told this would happen. He was shown it, and now he would hear it every time someone tried to pronounce this kid's poor name. All right, so why does this matter? This child, born in real time to a known woman in Isaiah's life, was the fulfillment of Isaiah 7:14 for Ahaz. Not symbolic, not spiritualized, but absolutely literal.
Bam.
The name Emmanuel, God with us, wasn't the legal name of the child, but a title representing God's message to Judah. You're not alone.
That's right.
So Maher-Shalal-Hash-Who, he was the living proof that God was indeed with them, bringing judgment on their enemies and eventually on them if they didn't trust him. So the birth of Maher-Shalal-Hash-Who,
Has browns. That's what I call them.
hash browns.
Scattered, smothered, covered. That's what I call them.
Wasn't just a cute holy announcement in the royal newsletter. It was a siren, a divine signal that the enemies breathing down Judah's neck were about to vanish, and the vanish they did. Okay? So.
I just want to have a quick sidebar about the phrase "born to a known woman."
Yeah. Yeah.
I hear it kind of fire and brimstone, like who was born to a known woman.
Oh no, yeah, but I mean, isn't that the thing though? It's the connotation of
sorry,
like
it just
yeah.
it made me chuckle.
No, I
Yeah.
know,
It's
but
just
that's
funny
it. That's
phrasing.
also part of like
Yeah.
our culture. Like we are sort of already primed to put sexual disgrace on women. We're
Right.
like primed to do it
A
automatically.
known woman.
Yeah, there's plenty
Yeah.
of times in the Bible where it doesn't happen at all, but we all just assume it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if that actually is the inverse, being the fact that she was known, because in
But
typical
I-
during
No,
I
it just
know-
means her
I-
identity
yeah.
wasn't a secret.
Yeah,
she
I
was
know.
just a
I know what
person.
Rick meant. He meant a woman known to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
associated with
Yeah.
Isaiah.
Yeah.
But it
She's
just
a
No,
known
it's still
woman.
funny.
yeah, in his speed to try to get through the point. Yeah, I thought.
All right.
Sorry,
Here's the
I'm
heartbreaking
going to labor
twist.
some dumb crap today.
That's
Apparently,
all good. Despite being given a sign, despite seeing the prophecy fulfilled in real time, Ahaz chose his own path. Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me. That's in 2 Kings chapter 16, verse 7. So instead of trusting Emmanuel or God with us, Ahaz pledged allegiance to Assyria. He called himself Tiglath-Pileser's son, which is a title of covenant and submission.
Mm.
He stripped the temple of its gold to pay off a pagan king. You can find that in 2 Kings 16:8. He remodeled the altar to copy pagan designs. You can find that in 2 Kings 16:10 through 11. And shut the temple doors altogether. You can find that in 2 Chronicles 28:24. If you're wondering what it looks like to reject God's deliverance while still benefiting from it, this is what that looks like. Ahaz watched the word of the Lord come true verse by verse and still chose fear over faith. That's what we have going on here. But here's where the grace sneaks in. Despite Ahaz's unbelief, God still kept his promise.
Mm-hmm.
The coalition failed. The sign stood. The child was born, and those kingdoms fell. The Lord himself will give you a sign.
Mm.
Ahaz didn't ask for it. He didn't want it. He didn't believe it, but God gave it anyway. All right. However, this is also because we know the New Testament, this is a countdown clock also to the Christ, and we've got to figure out why he uses it this way. Hello. Is that that's the new cooking timer that we have
He
on
said,
our
he said, right meow.
right meow. So what we do know is that Isaiah's prophecy and his reputation has been vindicated.
Mm.
He said what would happen, and then it came to pass.
Right.
All right. So Just when we close the book and file Isaiah 7:14 under ancient political prophecies fulfilled, something unexpected happens. Centuries later, a young Jewish man named Matthew, writing to a mostly Jewish audience, opens his gospel with a familiar phrase. Matthew chapter 1, verse 22 through 23. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. Yep, he uses that verse. And suddenly, what was once a ticking clock for a nervous king becomes a countdown to the birth of the Messiah. So, do you remember that Hebrew word Alma?
Mm.
And we showed earlier that it means young woman of marriageable age, with possible implications of virginity, but not guaranteed. It's very flexible and contextual. And even within the context of the Bible, we never really found one that was virgin. When Matthew
Because it's a different word.
That's right. But when Matthew quotes Isaiah, he's not using Hebrew. He's quoting the Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures. And the Septuagint uses a very specific Greek word, parthenos. And that word doesn't mean young woman. It means virgin unequivocally.
Partially because, and let me just throw this in there.
Yeah.
This is a revelation about Greek culture and the way that they thought about women.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Greek culture, girls got married, like at like 12, 13. Like they married them off really young to men that were much older than them.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't
the marriageable age of somebody out of Mississippi.
And the thing is that because Greek culture was a male-dominated culture where women were not considered citizens, and we've talked about this. Women were garbage. They were for breeding purposes only.
Mm-hmm.
Men were obsessed with each other. All of the plays that we have Clouds. We have even like Plato. Was it Plato's play? The big dinner that they have at the end with all the famous people. Whatever. Women aren't there. They're not talking about women. They're not talking about loving women. The highest form of ideal love in Greek culture.
What was the one that you read to us about? Like women are pigs and women are all.
Oh, that poem, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
It starts with an S.
It's Semonides on women. The Semonides poem on women, right? Yeah.
If you don't know that one, go back to Notes from the Other Side and listen to that,
Mama. If you go listen, if you go read like ancient Greek art, we talk about Sappho, and Sappho being like the only female artist of whose work we have any of, but we only have like bits and pieces, and we don't really have anything complete of hers. All of the complete like art that we have, it's an incredibly male-dominated culture where women were nothing. They meant nothing. Mm-hmm. They were only useful and valuable as a breeding agent.
Yes.
And therefore, their virginity was the only thing that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no word for like a young woman because her identity outside of her breeding capacity was irrelevant to these dudes. I told you there was literally an author that wrote a whole piece on the way on the fact that women should really just be kept chained in the basement and used for breeding purposes only because they were so stupid and valueless outside of that. A man's education in ancient Greece continued past the 6th grade on through college. They didn't get married till they were 30. Mm-hmm. They just had sex with each other. They explored things with each other. Women were like, they were absolutely irrelevant, and they were not part of the conversation at all.
So are you saying that there's not a Greek word for young woman versus virgin?
What I'm saying is it would have been, I don't think there might be a word for young woman, but I don't think there was. Okay. I honestly don't think there was. I think
somebody asked ChatGPT. Why don't you ask? Somebody asked if there's a Greek word for young woman other than Parthenos.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, because if that's the priority, virginity. Just imagine a world. What's the thing you were talking about?
All the
Put
words
yourself
for women
in the frame where the value of a woman is her virginity, and then there's a BC and AD.
Yeah.
What's the question?
Yeah.
Is there a Greek word for young woman other than Parthenos? Parthenos.
Is there a Greek word for virgin other than...
No. Is there a Greek word for young woman?
Is there a Greek word for young woman other than Parthenos?
Just ask for a Greek word.
I'm going to do it.
Just ask for young woman.
Yes, there is.
Oh.
The Greek word parthenos can mean young woman or virgin, depending on the context. It's the term often used in ancient Greek literature and also appears in the New Testament.
That's not the same thing as there being a different word.
Is there a different word than that in the Greek literature?
Another word that can be used is kore, which generally means girl or maiden. It often refers to a young, unmarried woman and can be found in various contexts in Greek literature and mythology.
Well, here's what I did learn from that just now. They said that Parthenos could be used much like the word Alma could be used. Just now, did you hear it? So in other words, it's not unequivocally. So my research was wrong, or ChatGPT is a liar.
I think it still just has to do with. I think it has to do with sexual politics.
It might
to some
be.
Claude
degree.
disagrees with ChatGPT.
you know, I
Claude
think-
specifically says that it is specifically refers to a virgin or unmarried
Specifically.
young woman. Is
Specifically,
what Claude says.
yes.
It says
What, Parthenos?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, yeah, it's difficult because I don't speak Greek.
Right. Sure. Here
And
we
so,
are.
And also,
Yeah.
we talk about like Koine Greek versus other kinds of Greek. Like, we're talking about how languages develop over time
Yeah.
and how things change. But I literally, I mean, there's other politics involved, but I literally don't think that at the time the Septuagint was being written, there was a common word for a young woman that was apart from her virginity, because the two things were prized and valued so simultaneously in a very misogynistic culture that viewed women as nothing other than breeding partners.
Listen, and I don't have a problem with your explanation.
Yeah.
Tell me how this matters in regard to Jesus' mother and his birth.
Well, you're going to probably be upset about that.
That's right.
Because
That's where you're heading. And that's why I know that's where you're heading.
and you know that about me, right? So I
No,
don't
I don't actually
see-
know that
yeah.
about you, but I know that
Right.
you're ready to challenge it. So go for it.
I'm very curious to hear what your next step is, which is explaining why Matthew would use the word virgin when Matthew could have very easily used a different word.
Yes.
And why Matthew continued to kind of perpetuate this particular ideology about virgin birth, which is not supported by Paul. Paul doesn't talk about it at all. It's not supported by Mark. It's not supported by John. It's not a thing that comes up really anywhere except in the book of Matthew. And the book of Matthew is trying to use that Hebrew text to justify his use of the word virgin. And oh my gosh, now I've got parthenogenesis, the Immaculate Conception. He's trying to like use that for some purpose that other New Testament authors don't seem invested in at all. And so because I know that
You're unlocking the key
all
right now
four-
just by saying that.
because I know that all four different versions of the gospel were never meant to be the same. They were added into the book on purpose because they were different, because they spoke to specific communities that had specific ideas.
There it is. Who was Matthew talking to?
Well, exactly. And so that's why I'm saying I'm really curious to hear what you're going to say, because, and I've said this before 1,000 times, my belief in Jesus and his mission does not hang on virgin birth. I really couldn't give a shit one way or the, I mean, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I am not so obsessed with Jesus's physical body being only purely Mary and the Holy Spirit, because I don't need that to be true in order for his mission to still be real and for his spirit to still be of God. I don't need that.
So that's
I
fine.
was told to need that as a way to control my own brain and the way I interpreted scripture as I grew up in a controlling, high control religion.
Yeah, because you're dirty and you can't make anything clean.
Well, and the bottom line too, exactly. And
Right?
so Jesus, right. And so Jesus had to be separated somehow. And that's the thing. That's the thing. The Greek people also had this whole thing with gods impregnating women and making these pure half-breeds that weren't quite human. That was not a Hebrew thing. That was a Greek thing. And so it's interesting that this is coming up at this time because, again, like I said, because it's just one of those things that I'm like, you know what? That book in Isaiah wasn't talking about Jesus. The word was not actually virgin. I don't exactly know why Matthew chose to use it, but because it's not relevant to Paul at all. It's not relevant to John. It's not relevant to Mark. It's not relevant to all these other people. Like, I'm going to just like let it go. I don't know why we've made such a sticking point of it in Christianity at all, but you're about to tell me why.
Yes.
And I'm very excited to hear it.
So in the same way,
Yeah.
the idea was that God was going to do something for his people, whether they wanted it or not. And what is Jesus' name? What does it mean? What is his actual name?
Messiah?
Yeshua.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeshua means Yahweh saves.
Joshua.
That's right. It means Yahweh saves. What Matthew is doing is he's employing the understanding of what the purpose was for it anyway, was that God's going to do something for you. He's going to deliver Judah. He's going to deliver Israel. He's going to deliver his people. He's coming to deliver them in a Greco-Roman world. Even if he decides, and by the way, the woman says, "Behold, I've not known a man, so how can this be?" You don't have to know the word virgin or not.
Yeah, sure.
The fact is, Mary, according to Matthew, said, "I haven't known a man."
Mm-hmm.
And this is an amazing thing. But think about Jesus' life and think about how his brutal death and all of the things that he went through just to get us delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And how we even talk about it 2,000 years later, right? Matthew is using this word to say, this is what grace looks like. That's what he's doing. He's showing the people who are his audience that are Jews. He's writing to Jews, okay? Matthew is not writing to Gentiles. He's writing to Jews.
Influenced
he's using
heavily by Greek
Gentile
culture,
language and culture, but he's also describing something that they would know from their own words, their own text, their own understandings. Ahaz didn't want it, and God did it anyway, right?
That's real problematic in terms of Mary didn't want it, but God did it anyway.
King Herod didn't want it. He wants to side with Rome, but God's going to do it anyway.
You
see it?
Yeah,
The real king is being born.
Here's what's interesting.
In the line of David.
Yeah.
Not an Idumean, but in the Davidic line,
Yeah.
which is what Ahaz was worried about because he is the Davidic line and they thought it was going to cease. And God honored his promise. The Davidic line is going to make it. So when he's saying that, he's literally showing them David's line is still active. God's promises, they stick. That's really what that's about. I don't think it's about the virginity or anything as much as it is that God is sending a deliverer and he is honoring all of these promises from before.
Yeah. Well, and back to Dan's book, Dan kind of suggests here that because Matthew was written much later and like the earliest versions of the gospel don't seem to care about that fact, and Paul didn't seem to really care about that fact, it doesn't pop up a whole lot, that Matthew like added it and made the point of pointing it out for like a very specific purpose and a very specific reason, and that it has we don't know. I was
going to say that's speculative at best. I mean, you can't put
we
that
don't
on the
know.
text.
Yeah, we don't know. But like, it's fascinating that again,
it is.
We've just discovered that the word virgin doesn't exist and is irrelevant in the Isaiah prophecy.
Right.
So, but now all of a sudden, virgin is relevant in Matthew's story. So it seems as if Matthew, speaking to a Jewish audience, has even stepped away from his own Jewish roots and has adopted Greek culture in order to tell his story, because he's adopting the Greek version of his story instead of the Hebrew version of it. Why? What's he after? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And I think that, again, like, whether or not virgin is irrelevant. Listen, I mean, I don't want to do that stupid thing, that hermeneutic where it's like, if I can just I don't have to prove my point. I just have to create a little bit of doubt. I just have to say it's not impossible. And then I feel like I'm justified.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not trying to do that. But I also believe that that the different four authors of the gospel had a different story to tell for a reason. And I think it's very interesting. And that Matthew did it this way. There is a lot. There's astrology references, right, in Matthew that are specifically related to Greek culture. There's all these underpinnings in Matthew's story, even though he's speaking to a Jewish audience, that would suggest he's specifically combating and dealing with like some of these Greek ideas and these Greek beliefs that have snuck in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of, so next to Nazareth is a little town called Sephora. Okay.
I love their makeup.
They have great makeup.
Yes, they do.
I use it all the time. So Derek Lambert from Myth Vision, well, he did a video when he went to Israel and he showed the floor of a synagogue was a mosaic. Okay. And it was all about Greek culture. It was huge. It was pretty wild. Now, Jesus had a problem with that. Jesus had a problem with Greek culture. He had a problem with anything other than Jewishness, really. Okay. He was going to the Gentiles, but not while he was on the earth.
Yeah.
He wasn't. So in other words, if Matthew decides to use Greek culture and Greek things to define something, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me,
Yeah.
But as far as like some people might get all bent out of shape about this, be like, oh, but she's over. Well, look, in Matthew's gospel, she says, how can this be since I've known not a man? I don't need any other words. It's obvious that Matthew's saying that she's never known a man.
Can I interject a little?
She could be lying. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but that's again, it's
and
putting
like
it on
also,
the text.
I could get roofied and get pregnant and think I'd never known a man. I mean, like, I know we're putting all this stuff on it, you know,
Yeah.
but I think I am not above, and this also gets me in trouble. But you know, I also don't think Paul wrote Timothy, so let's get into it.
Yeah. Oh, we're not going to get into that today. But
I am not. I don't believe that just because somebody said it in the Bible, just because they said it out of their mouth, that they were telling the truth.
So how do you get to any kind of like? How do you get to any kind of truth then from the Bible?
Oh yeah, it's very difficult. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah, but you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that for the people that Matthew was talking to, there's also this Mark. In Mark, Jesus is a dude. He's a human being.
Yeah.
Who ascends into his divinity as he grows, right? But in John, right, he's just like in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and here he is now.
High Christological,
right?
yeah.
High Christology. And so I'm curious about, and I haven't done enough research to like dig into it, but I'm curious where Matthew falls in terms of as it was written, because when Jesus, in the beginning, people weren't as obsessed with Jesus's God nature. There was no, in Matthew, it's almost necessary to remove the dad and replace it with God in order to justify the God nature, the godness of Jesus. It's
Yeah.
almost like it's a literary device that he's using to speak to a certain audience, to invoke the mythology. Now, and I imagine, right?
Yeah.
Of Greek culture, which these people were embedded in. We talked about the star and all the astrological references that happen in the Greek in the book of Matthew. Like he talks about, we saw his star rising in the east. The word used there is literally an astrological word used to describe a person's rising sign, right? Like there are all these references. It might just be that the community that Matthew was writing to needed the dad part to be godly in order to stir up their faith in some way, because that would have been maybe part of a cultural reference that made sense to them, you know? But I mean, like,
Right. It's like let's say you're,
and that's fine if you need that. Like, listen to me. If you need Jesus Christ to be born of a virgin and your faith is hinging on that because you have to believe that, then brother, sister, get it. I don't care. That's totally fine. I'm like not mad at you.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there are plenty of opportunities in the scriptures where, Paul says, I don't suffer a woman to speak in church, but then 2 seconds later, he's saying, thank this apostle who's come in my name. Her name's Hunia.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's, for me, it's okay that and this makes me cry. This is how I find truth, Rick.
Yeah.
Because it's okay that the Bible is big enough to include all the ways that God needs to tell the story to find you.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah, that's good. I mean,
And I'm not
you can
attached.
you can even say that about ourselves.
Yeah, I'm
As
not
we
attached
grow
to that.
and we read the Bible. You know how
Yeah.
we say it's the living word because it's always changing?
Yeah.
Right.
As we change and as we
change
grow,
from glory to
it's-
glory.
it still means
Progressive
what it
revelation.
means when it means. Yeah.
And that's what we've talked about before in the book of Luke. Is it Luke or Matthew? It might even be Matthew. Where Jesus is talking to the Pharisees. They were questioning about marriage. And the Pharisees are like, well, God told us that we could have a certificate of divorce. And
Yeah.
Jesus is like, yeah, Moses gave you that because you sucked so much.
Because you have hardness of
That
heart.
was
yeah.
never actually God's design.
Mhm.
And you think about how much time and energy is spent in the book of Leviticus on the holiness code and on the sacrificial system. And then you've got in Psalms, God says, I never even cared about your sacrifices. They didn't mean anything to me. That was never what I wanted. I desired mercy,
Yeah.
right? So I accept that God is much bigger than my 21st century American version of the story of God. And
That's why I always take it like in my second sermon at the conference, I took it down to the baseline. This is what I did. I said, I heard his voice when I was 10 and I followed him and I still am. That's all I know how to say.
Dude.
That was it.
Yep.
I heard it and I followed.
You know,
I didn't have theological basis for it. I don't have a doctorate for it. I just know that his words meant everything to me, and they still do. The end.
You know, and you know what's funny? I mean, like, so we did a testimony series on Notes from the Other Side, and she was talking about when she asked Jesus into her heart when she was 7 years old, and she was singing that song, into my heart, come into my heart, Lord Jesus, right? And she said, I imagined in my mind, my heart, and I saw like a fire crackling in a fireplace and like a pair of slippers and a big overstuffed chair. And God said to me, if you invite me in, I will come and I will live there with you and you won't be alone.
Yeah.
And she invited God into her heart. There was no repentance. There was no proto-evangelium. There was no original sin involved.
Mm-hmm.
There was just this loving connection with God through Jesus Christ. And it's the same thing for me. Like when I first encountered Jesus Christ, it was this incredible, loving, rescuing, you are not alone. You are part of something bigger. I'm here. Just accept me. Reach down and reach out and accept. Just ask me to come into your heart, right? I had to learn about sin later.
Yeah.
And so I find, I mean, Jesus said, the rich man asked Jesus and says, how do I get into heaven? And he says, what does the scripture say? And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor yourself. And Jesus says, go do likewise. And he says, okay, well, who's my neighbor? And he tells the story of the Samaritan.
It makes the Samaritan a hero.
Jesus didn't say, ask for forgiveness from your like deepest sins. What Jesus said was love God, love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Even, you know what I mean? And again, he hadn't sacrificed himself yet. He wasn't addressing the sacrificial system. But I say all that to say, I think that American Christian culture has made it a lot more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, it
And
is
we've
complicated.
made it a lot more exclusive than it needs to be.
And we beat the hell out
And
of
we've
each other
made it-
because it's so complicated.
yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
And so when it comes to this specific
Like, I'm so
issue,
tired of hearing Billy talk.
Sorry.
Golly,
he's
man.
so loud.
Sorry.
It's the back.
I tell you
I
what.
want to ask Billy a question.
I tell you what, all that other stuff Billy said, I'm going to take it out of this episode.
Dang, just cut it right out.
It's
Billy,
gone.
have you heard any of this stuff we're talking about tonight as far as like the Old Testament fulfillment?
I've heard it. Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. Yeah,
About-
this is all new.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard the Matthew one, of course, but the other one though.
Oh, you hadn't heard about King Ahaz and all that other
no,
stuff?
that wasn't on a Sunday school lesson ever.
That's the other side of this. That's why I asked him.
Yeah.
Is that we don't take the time to do this in church.
No.
Not like this.
God, no.
No, it's almost like we focus on the New Testament and we unhinge it
Yeah,
from the Old Testament, and we don't get the full meaning.
Yeah.
And I
All of the
think that-
time.
yes, and so I think that that's one of the biggest problems. We've developed all of these ideas based off one side of the story. We haven't looked at the wholeness of what it is. And I think that it is as simple as just hearing and knowing and following.
I
Yeah.
might have been out that Sunday, chasing virgins and stuff,
It might have been.
They were probably Alamat, which is plural women who were young.
Hopefully they were virgins. We don't know. We don't know.
So
Yeah, I mean,
I'm kidding.
and this when we first
Is there
did
a
that,
Hebrew word for a virgin young man?
let me ask ChatGPT right now.
when we first did
It says-
when we first did the John the Baptist,
Yeah.
and we talked about how the punishment for being raped in the city was being stoned to death.
Yeah.
But if a woman was raped in the country, then she would be okay.
Because you didn't
It's
know
perfectly fine.
because you didn't know if she screamed or not.
Yeah. Mary would have said, I haven't known a man, because if she'd had admitted it, she would have gotten stoned to death.
Mm-hmm.
If Mary had been raped, there is absolutely no way on earth that she would be able to admit that.
Yeah. Well, when we're trapped within the text, we can only do so much with it. We
Oh,
can't
yeah.
anytime we try to throw something on it,
Yeah.
because that's what
Can I
I
add a-
think that's what Bart Ehrman is guilty of mainly. I think he's a brilliant
Can I-
man, but
Can I add a couple here?
yeah, go ahead.
In the pretense of where, all right, so based on the writings, Mark was written first. Most likely it was a writing for Peter. Most scholarship says that Mark was writing for Peter because Mark wasn't a disciple.
Yeah. And Peter probably was a fisherman. He was probably illiterate.
So you got to understand, did you realize that even Matthew doesn't show up in his own book until chapter 9?
Oh, yeah.
For at least half his book, he's not even there. So the first part of his book, he's either having to research information or somebody is telling him the first half of his own book because he's not even there. And some of the other material that he's writing in his book, he's not there either. He says he's not there. We think he's there because he's writing about it, but he's not there.
Well, Luke tells the story of the birth too.
Tells the story of birth, but doesn't mention virgin. So somebody in the scholarship,
But
also,
he doesn't mention that Mary was raped by a Roman either.
Not at
Nobody
all.
does. Yeah, nobody does.
So-
yeah, no, I would absolutely 100% agree. Like, I completely invented that, right? Like, I 100% made that up.
I've
I get
heard
it.
No,
Bart
Yeah.
Ehrman says it.
So,
that's
being
right,
that
you told me that.
Matthew was a tax collector, he was rejected by his own kind because they hated him, because he was working with the Romans. He most likely hang out with the Romans more, which was a Greek culture people, than he was his own Jewish people. So could there be a possibility he has a Greek inflection in his book? Yes, there's a possibility because he hung out with them probably more because he became a tax collector and he was hanging out with them more. But we got to remember he wasn't there for the first part of his book. Somebody's having to tell him. Scholarship thinks that Peter rewrote his book from Mark and wrote it through Peter, or wrote it through Matthew.
Well, as a matter of fact, I've heard scholars call Matthew Fat Mark.
Yes.
I've heard him call that too. Well, I mean, there's also this idea that there are other documents.
I loved
that
Fat
we've
Mark's
lost.
first album.
Yeah. Also,
There-
the
yeah.
end of Matthew
Q.
is added on.
Yeah.
There's a text
You mean the end
in
of
Mark.
Mark?
Yep.
The end of Mark is added on.
Well, the end of Mark is, I think Matthew too.
Well,
Matthew 23 is added on.
I read the HarperCollins Study
I think
Bible,
that.
right? And it's the New Standard Revised Version, including Apocrypha.
So looping back to Isaiah, what is very interesting, it's a very good possibility that the reason Matthew added Isaiah part 2 there was leading to Herod's rule. It ended shortly after Christ was over 2 years old.
That's right. Within 2 years. That's a good point. Remember I was talking about King Herod? I actually had that in mind. We just never got there.
Yeah. Well, so I think
That's good. Good point.
Um,
Herod
yeah.
was dead within a couple years.
Yes, and that would have been in the same time frame of the kings
In
during
Isaiah.
in Isaiah, because there was still it's a very interesting. They link together. It's a matrix thing.
yeah. It was also written a little bit later, right? Like, it was written probably after the destruction. So just for fun, let's read this, just out of curiosity, just for fun. Circumstances of writing. And so this is just like in the beginning of your Bible. Like, everybody, you have a Bible and you read it.
Yep.
Do us all a huge favor. Read those big, annoying, long introductions at the beginning of your book. Super helpful. The Gospel of Matthew was written by a subject of the Roman Empire, which can be described as a hierarchically ordered, commercialized, advanced agrarian society with no middle class. A few powerful men and their families ruled. They were supported by bureaucrat slaves, official priests, and a sophisticated military establishment. Those at the bottom of the socioeconomic pyramid were local business people, artisans, and the vast majority peasant farmers and fishermen. There were also a few expendables like bandits, beggars, and prostitutes. With few exceptions, women always ranked below men and children below both. This structure was typical not only of Roman Italy, but also of the Roman provinces. Not surprisingly, these social strata appear throughout the gospel. Provincial governors, centurions, client kings, priests, local aristocrats, peasant farmers, artisans, fishermen, blah, 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 blah. Despite several important stories about women, the gospel is written for man by men. Political resistance to Rome in the gospel is not overt, but nonetheless suggestively implied. Jesus descended from King David through a long line of kings and is the promised Messiah. His name recalls Joshua the Savior, and his birth is marked by a heavenly star that is a threat to Rome's official ruling Herodian king. His message is about the kingdom of heaven, which is in contrast to the kingdom of Rome. His predecessor, the prophet John the Baptizer, is executed by Rome's appointed representatives. Herod Antipas, tetrarch of Galilee, he opposed the Jerusalem temple, blah, blah, blah. So, like, the reason I say that is, again, Matthew was telling a very specific story that was really embedded and related to the social hierarchy that he was living in the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
People are skipping the scroll.
That was a really big part of his story.
Sure.
And so in this hierarchical system, having Jesus be born of a virgin impregnated by God would have been like a really powerful statement because it signified Jesus's spiritual nature, which was completely and utterly outside of this thing. Like Jesus had an authority
Mhm.
that was above and beyond this Roman authority.
That's John chapter 1.
Right,
and
but
he
it's been
talks
talking
about it all
about
the way through
Matthew,
it.
but
Yeah.
it's but so it's like I think the virgin birth is a plot device that Matthew employed to drive a point home.
Well, the Isaiah.
And I think
You've never seen a virgin birth since, have you?
there's a woman who got stabbed with a knife that had semen on it, and it like in Mexico. It's a
Are
whole
you
thing.
serious? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, why was there semen on a knife?
Listen,
That is a weird knife.
I'm just saying.
It's a weird night,
I've
guys.
Googled it. Like, but you know, I mean, like the thing is you people can get pregnant all kinds of like if you get a little if you just get a little of it near
TZ, I was
you,
going to tell us about the birds and bees.
it's not that unheard of. I mean, like for people that are messing around and like dry humping, but like stuff gets in, like, you know what I mean? Like it's incredible. I'm just saying.
It's possible.
But that's not, but the thing is,
I'm
that's
gonna
not the
change
point.
the title of
I
this
don't
episode.
think that's the point. I don't think it's the point. He's using a literary device, I think.
Yeah.
He's using a literary device. He's employing a literary device because he's speaking to a certain audience and there's a certain specific story that he's trying to tell. And I don't think that the virgin birth piece is as relevant to Christ's journey and his goal and his job on the earth and everything that God had to us today as it was to the specific audience that Matthew's talking
The
to.
Isaiah
And so it just
connection
doesn't matter to me.
Could be related to the Herod king more so than it would be related to Jesus.
Right.
Well, and it's also yeah.
And really, nothing really happens until after he is baptized and then the heavens open and God starts speaking to him.
Right.
Right. You know, yeah. And, you know, I don't know. And the Bible just says, right, like it just says that the Holy Spirit like overshadowed her.
Yeah.
It's such a vague, like that particular conversation too has gotten so ugly and so muddied. Like, what does that mean? Did God create for himself a little magical penis
Right.
and insert magical semen into Mary?
Right.
Like, you're going to start getting yourself into a bunch of really weird places that are just as weird as me suggesting maybe she lied because she got raped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the ways that people have created the story around how that happened. What I'm saying is I don't think it's actually that important. I'm sorry, Catholic Church. I don't think it matters that much.
Yeah.
I don't think her virginity is as critical to the message of Jesus as it was to the particular audience that Matthew was talking to and why he used that particular literary device.
I mean, he wasn't born a high priest. He was placed as a high priest. I mean,
Right.
it's the same
There's
principle.
There's that too.
He's
Like,
he's not born into it. He's placed into it.
so they had to find a way
I
to
mean,
give him some biological priesthood or something.
I mean, he's placed as the order of Melchizedek, which, I mean, he wasn't born in a family of Melchizedek. He was placed as it because he was born under the kingship rule. He was born under the house of Judah.
Let's wrap this baby up, shall we? So if you weren't confused before,
Oh, boy.
You should be now.
we hope that you
But
are
we
now.
fixed it.
But here's
solved it
here's the
all.
biggest thing that you need to get out of this. Number one, there's always going to be a near time fulfillment in the Old Testament.
100%.
Look for it.
Yes.
Try to figure it out.
Yep,
because
it's there.
fast forwarding it to Jesus isn't always the first answer.
Right.
It's probably the second or third.
Yep.
Also, there's no reason why you can't think for yourself
100%.
and you can do some extra research and you can come to conclusions like Tiziana has when she reads things and she says, wait a minute, this word in Greek culture meant such and such and help develop some
And
theories.
if you disagree with us, email Andy.
That's right.
And nobody ever seems to email him. I don't know why.
I haven't checked it in a while because it was so dead. So maybe I need to check it.
And
again.
truthfully, the most important thing that
Yes.
anybody should have taken from this episode
Yes.
is that Billy has love handles now.
He
Yes.
does.
And
on the back.
It's really unfortunate for him.
he's got
It's terrible.
he's got a
awful.
kidney toe hitches.
Sadly, we've had to cut out all of what he said earlier today because it just wasn't worth
Kidneys are pregnant. They're virgin kidneys. Okay. But I do have one question. I know we got to go, but
No,
real
we don't
quick.
have to go if you have a
This
question.
Easter is totally off topic. Okay, I
Uh-huh.
was thinking about this as Easter. Is there this is a weird wood question. What was the cross made out of?
What kind of
Wood-wise?
wood?
Yeah. I've heard
It's-
dogwood, the olive tree. Does it say anywhere in the Bible? You guys read the Bible way
It
more
does
than I
not
do.
say what kind of wood it is, but in all of my research, it seems to be cedar that was brought out of Lebanon, which is where they got a lot of their wood from. The
Okay.
Roman Empire owned everything.
Okay.
So that was the idea. And
That
they
was-
made a bunch of them. And there was a lot of cedar there.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And I've heard somebody say that they thought, we talked about this,
Yes,
that it's
recently.
quite possibly the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that he was crucified on. Bam! Try that on for size.
Could
So
have
it would
been
have
a-
come
Why
from
not?
the Fertile Crescent, or it would have come from Babylon, that area. Why not? You sound like Gary DeMar.
Love it.
Sure.
Sure.
Sure. Why not?
Why not?
Okay.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
no,
right.
You're right. I mean,
Can
good
we end it
question.
with a joke, though?
It doesn't
Yeah,
say
you got one?
specific-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Did you know that sex workers don't fart?
No, I didn't.
They don't. They just let out little prostitutes.
Ah, the little prostitute.
Isn't that joke horrible?
It's great. I love it.
Sure. Whatever.
All right, Billy.
Yes, sir. I'm so glad I'm here.
I'm so glad you're
Yes,
here.
you are.
I can't believe that you said 2 words. I'm so glad that
Jelly
you did.
belly. Billy. Jelly belly Billy.
Tiziana, as always, I loved it. It was great.
Thanks.
I enjoyed every bit of it.
I also just feel like I should say sorry.
Why?
What?
Do you always feel that way?
I do. That's why
No,
I took
I
a
mean-
Ritalin before I got up here. I was like, I'm going to get excited. I need
Yeah.
to take a Ritalin.
I threw that right at him. And yeah, I'm also going to talk about the virgin birth. And she was like, bam, get the medicine out.
Yeah.
Could have got that.
Take a pill. Okay?
Big Daddy, thanks for driving up, brother.
Oh yeah, man.
And Andy, I really appreciate you crossing your yard.
Yeah.
The really tall grass
Anytime.
yard.
I know. It's,
The real MVP.
Don't talk about his yard. He's going to get pissed.
I know.
He's going to get so
I was
mad.
angry.
I literally walked in and I was like, you need to cut your grass. And he went on a 20-minute tirade.
Oh my
and I was like,
God.
yikes.
Is that what y'all were talking about when I
Yeah.
came in? Because it was like a
No.
hornet's nest in here. I don't know what the
That was
the
something
hell
else.
going on.
I don't know.
I don't
okay,
even know what
okay.
we were talking about, but it doesn't take long for it to become a hornet's nest up in here.
No.
That's for sure. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we will talk to you guys again next time on the Burrs of Berea. Peace out.
Later.
When I'm in the kitchen, I make it look like I'm hosting my own cooking show. Pots clanging, oven doors slamming, me yelling stuff like, "Where's the roux?" I don't even know what a roux is, honestly. Meanwhile, what am I actually doing? Sprinkling on a little thing called my secret ingredient. That's it. That's the whole magic trick. They've got 2 blends, and honestly, they're doing all the work while I just look busy. First up, everything seasoning. This stuff turns your basic breakfast into a brunch masterpiece. I've put it on chicken, eggs, toast, hash browns. Oh, and last week, I sprinkled it on leftover pizza like a total savage. Game changer. And yes, I got a little cocky and threw it on some apple slices. Is that illegal? Probably. Did it taste amazing? Yes. Now, for the main event, steakhouse seasoning. This seasoning turns your grill into a holy shrine of meat. Burgers, next level. Steaks, legendary. Portobello mushrooms, so good I had to sit down for a minute. One shake and suddenly people are like, dang, you must have marinated this for days. And I'm like, totally. Yep, marinated it in secret magic. So if you want to look like a culinary genius without actually doing much, head over to mysecretblends.com. That's mysecretblends.com. And don't forget to use code BURROWS at checkout for 20% off your first order. That's BURROS at checkout for 20% off your first order. Bang your pots, slam your drawers, but just know the real secret, it's in the shake. My secret ingredient. Try it today. Well, Rick, what did you think about the Berean conference that we just went to?
Man, I really enjoyed it.
Rick went as well.
Yeah, Rick
Yeah, I
Carter
did.
was there. Yeah,
As
kind
well
of
as
a-
Rick.
Rick and Rick changed the world.
Change the world. Yeah, I loved it. It was kind of I was a last minute inclusion to go.
Celebrated his birthday
Yeah.
while he was there.
Happy birthday
Yeah.
to
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Oh my gosh.
Perfect. I will accept this as a
So much
gift.
better than
I
Marilyn
really would.
Monroe.
Dude, please put your pants back on.
Yeah.
no.
Ooh.
Wow, it's cold in here.
It's gonna make it a lot easier for Greg, a lot less easier for Greg to climb those legs.
I'm scared. Just the
my
idea
gosh.
of like pantsless and a cat climbing your
Oh
legs.
my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was awesome. It was I mean, if any of our listeners have been listening to any of the in tune with everything, them talking about how much more relaxing, how much more enjoyable it was. It really was. It was such a different setting than the first few years. It was kind of stuffy, kind of formal. This time it was extremely a lot more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
It really was.
I feel like everybody was laughing and there's a lot of joy.
Well, I will say that from the speaker standpoint, they were a lot more ribbing at each other, which really broke the ice really awesomely.
That makes things fun.
It does. It really.
That's why I'm always making fun of you. I'm just trying to
Yeah, let's break the ice.
Yeah, break the ice. This is awesome.
Son
I
of
love
a-
you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna send you off on a rocket.
It does.
Did you have a favorite one, or was there anything that just like really stuck out to you?
I'm a little biased in this situation, but the one that I will say is the one where you talked about the group of the Kuragites and the Percletons. The reason I say that is, and I picked at Bob about this. I said, dude, you're going to have to elevate your PowerPoint game after this one.
Yeah.
Rick
I spent a lot of time working on those AI photos, man.
And maybe
you're a real prompt engineer. I don't know what that means.
I just didn't think my jokes were going to be funny enough, so I needed at least a picture to make them laugh.
No, I mean it was absolutely perfect. It's kind of crazy how it just relaxed everybody into a different. From a standpoint of like full preterism, there's so much tension when we talk about those things all the time because it's such a heavy topic. Because it's always like you're set up for an argument, but your total presentation and everything just kind of really broke all that away, and it wasn't what it used to be, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
I hope that from a speaker standpoint that instead of standing there and trying to drill everybody down with theology, they the whole premise of what our show is about, what you did during that period of time, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke, but maybe I am, but it really set the mood and tone. Bob does such a great job with his discussion and what he brings to the table of something like a little bit different every time.
Yeah, he did one called The Mandela Effect.
Oh my gosh, dude.
In the Bible. It was so good, like breaking down the different places where we think this is what the Bible says, and we've been saying it all for centuries, but then you find out it's not.
You just go look and you're like, that's not
premise of
quite
the Mandela Effect, because we got Sarita.
Not Sarita. We'll call her Tiziana this time.
Oh.
Remember, Tiziana the hottie.
Excuse me.
Who cut Samson's hair?
Who cut Samson's hair?
Yes.
Delilah?
Right.
Great answer.
That's what a lot of people will answer.
Great
That's
answer.
not true. It's untrue.
It's not right.
It's not. I actually did it. The word means barber.
Yes.
The servant of Delilah
She
cut
called
it.
She called a man in to cut his hair.
And he cut the hair, and he was a barber. The word means barber.
Yeah.
Isn't that neat?
It's
a funny way to say homosexual, but that's fine.
I mean, listen.
The purpose of the Mandela Effect is that we talk about something so much.
Sure.
That's,
it's like the Berenstain Bears. It's not. It's the Berenstain Bears.
Berenstain.
Also, I'm sorry. When did the word become orangutan?
Yeah, it's orangutan.
No, it's orangutan.
I'm saying
orangutan?
I've said orangutan since I was a kid.
My entire life, and so has everybody else. But all of a sudden, they're like, no, it's always been orangutan. And I'm like, no, it's not.
It's not.
But it has been. That's that Mandela effect.
Yes.
Like, it's always been orangutan. I don't know how we all heard orangutan.
So what lays down with the lamb?
The lion?
Wrong. But we always say the lion lays with the lamb, but
right,
you know
great
what it
answer.
is?
Absolutely great answer, but it's wrong.
It's the wolf lays down with the lamb.
Oh, wow,
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so
the lion lays down with
the bear.
I thought you were going to say like mint jelly.
The lion lays down with that homosexual barber.
Well, he's a tiger.
Oh my God.
So it's not as weird as you think.
Jeez.
They're great.
You know what?
So what'd you think, Rick? I mean, you've
I
asked
thought
me.
it was hilarious. I thought everybody was very fun. It was really informative and fun.
Yes.
And my favorite joke, I mean, I tried to do things that were funny too to keep things relaxed, but my favorite joke of the entire time was Gary DeMar, because Gary talked about that part in the book in The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey, where he was like that that the locusts were like these helicopters, and then he goes completely quiet, Andy, and he goes, sure, why not? Why not?
Sure, why not? That's good.
And it was so pointed and just right on the money. I was like, that was comedic timing for sure.
And especially coming from somebody, he doesn't seem like he's a jokester.
Yeah,
but he is.
He is very funny. He's a very funny guy, very thoughtful guy.
And the more he's kind of hanging out with this heretic crowd, the more comfortable he's getting.
And that's the beauty that I think that's something that I've been hoping to see within full preterism, is that people like Zach will come right out and say, I may not be right about this. Give me an answer in the comments. Or, I could be totally off about this, but this is where I think we're heading. That is such a refreshing feeling, instead of somebody saying like, this is how it is, and then if you don't pick my side, then this is a problem, which is what it feels like in full preterism all the time. Everybody's got a side.
See, the people in full preterism haven't discovered how important encouraging engagement is.
Yeah.
Right, definitely.
But that was not the case with all of the speakers. The speakers, like, we all genuinely care about each other. We care about each other's work. We talk about each other's work. And when we're like, even I had said, there was something that I saw, like while I was up there at the podium, that I was like, hey, Zach, what do you think of this? He was like, I'm going to dig in deep. Y'all enjoy this one, because I don't know if it's true or not, but this is what I see. And so it's just liberating to be able to talk about it. Now, was I right? Probably not, but it sounded good at the moment.
It's kind of interesting you said that, because I was kind of going with, when I talked to Zach one time before, and I said, my opinion on that would be, maybe state it at the end, but he almost overstates it. And I said, don't overstate it,
right? Because
then it almost makes you look like you just don't really have a clue.
Right.
I said, because honestly, I said, Zach, I mean, this was for the listeners. The other part that was extremely interesting that they don't know about, what Rick was going on with Rick while he was at the conference, is he was going through panic mode because everybody was talking about what Rick was going to talk about.
Everybody. We
were all, and I say weird because I wasn't speaking, but from the standpoint of what we all study, what we all talk about, it's amazing how all of us are in the same flow of things, and we're talking about the same things, and we're never talking.
And by the way, like with the theme, all the theme was for the conference was, it's how shall we then live, which is about what is it like to live if you're in the kingdom? How do you live in the kingdom?
Almost as a play on the roundtable that we did.
Yeah, it is. And if you ask the question, people can kind of go all over the map with that one. It's pretty wide variety. And David Curtis doesn't tell us what we have to speak on or anything. So the fact that we were all talking about something similar and kind of running into each other's, like we were even quoting the same scriptures and stuff.
Oh,
it was
man,
wild.
Like all over it.
Yeah. And I even made the point. I was like, I'm getting ready to walk over all of your talks, guys. Get ready. And Rick was actually staying in my room because he's a horrible planner and he had nowhere to stay. And so,
which is totally true.
But you saw, like, I had to go back in there and I was like,
stressing out.
I was like, I'm going to move like 12 slides and I'm going to reprioritize this, because what they said, I'm right there with them.
You felt like you were repeating. Yeah.
Well, I was, but I also wanted to bring out the other points more. So yeah, it was really wild.
Which I told him, I told him, said, just relax, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. We're all in the same, that's great that it's amazing that we're all in the same flow, same theme.
Yeah.
That's why you want to be one of the opening speakers.
Yeah, get it out first.
Just lay waste to everybody else's ideas. Just cover all the bases.
Good point.
Yeah,
either be first or be last. Never be in the middle.
But I enjoyed there were so many people that had never been there before. I got to meet them. And there were new people, and I enjoyed being around everybody.
Had somebody there from England?
I don't know about Spain. I saw Canada and England. I didn't know about Spain.
I think while they announced it, there was somebody there. I never met that person.
I didn't either.
I'm a terrible job at meeting people.
Yeah. I think I met everybody. There might have been a few that I didn't. I tried. There was 120 people there, so it was pretty hard in just a weekend.
And they're talking about going bigger.
Yeah, they are. They are talking about it. I know Gary DeMar wants 500. They were talking about maybe 400 next time, so which would be bigger than the one in Arkansas.
And Arkansas was great.
It was awesome.
It was great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to, to seeing where this is all heading. But I think that all in all, it was probably the funnest, most joyful one that I've been at.
I agree with you 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, even over Arkansas. It was, man. It was really cool. But excuse me.
And you can't plan for something like that. You really can't. That type of mood, that type of everything that was going on, you never can plan that. That just organically happened in the moment.
Well, you can set it up, or you can make it difficult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can lead those things. You can't command the result, but you can make an environment that invites kind of levity and friendliness, or you can kind of make an environment that does not.
Well, and that's like for me, this was my first time. I spoke at Mike Miano's conference, and it was a very, small, intimate one, which I really enjoyed. And he's coming back, guys. Mike Miano's coming back. And
really?
Yeah, he'll be here at the end of the summer. He's going to come early September.
Cool. Exciting.
Yeah, I just talked to him yesterday. But the thing for me was all of these men, like they speak more like on a regular basis. I speak in podcast form, like conversational back and forth. So it's not that it reminded me of Colin Riley. Colin Riley, I worked with him in engineering years ago, and I got into this new job where I was traveling all over the world meeting with DNA scientists. Okay. So I was really out of my league, and I was like telling Colin, I was like, I don't know what it is, man, but like I'm in a conference room and there's like 30 scientists, and then there's me, this podunk dude from Fletcher that doesn't even know how to pronounce words properly. And he said, have you ever heard of the imposter syndrome? And I said, I have not. He said, well, the imposter syndrome is whenever you're in a group with a bunch of colleagues and you feel like I'm not adequate enough to be in this group. I was like, oh, so I have imposter syndrome. He goes, no, you're just inadequate. He's such a nice guy. But
fits right in.
But in all reality, what I learned from that experience in my life was that I didn't have to know what they knew. They needed to know what I had to offer. That's why I was there.
Right.
Because I was a plastics engineer. And so they wanted to know, how do we get microfluidics in this particular type of plastic, or what kind of plastic do we use? How do we get this flow? How do we get this pressure? Well, those are things that I know. Those are things that I can help you with. So it wasn't about knowing what they knew. So I knew when I went into this that I was among a bunch of really good speakers, these people that are really good at this. And rather than feeling inadequate, I was just like, I'm going to be me. And that's it.
So the next time you go to speak, we'll just get Andy to come along and stand 10 rows out.
Yeah.
And just
So am I supposed to make you look smart by comparison? Is that what we're going for?
Well, he said the conversational part because he's
no,
y'all are always like you're talking back
I'll just
and forth.
yell a joke.
I'll get
over
you
the crowd.
I'll get you a poster board that has like amen written on it, and you can just lift it up to me every now and then. There it is, amen. Yeah, that was really good. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen. I'm speaking in July at the Eschatology of Genesis conference. And it's really weird because it's pretty much a covenant creation conference, which covenant creation is, if you don't know what it is, most people who listen to this do, but for people like Andy who don't know, covenant creation looks at Revelation and says, okay, Revelation is fulfilled in a spiritual sense, not in a physical sense. So then they go back to Genesis and they say, wait a minute, what if Genesis is something that's more spiritual and not physical? And you remember when we talked to John Walton, and he was like, it's not talking about actual literal creation. It's talking about order out of chaos. And so they're saying that to the nth degree, like, well, wait, what about this? Like, what if this is how, this is set up? And so you can't have a good eschatology without a really good protology. So their argument is, if it was physical to start with, then why is it ending spiritual rather than ending physical? Right? That's kind of where they're at. Well, I bring an opposing view. And they said to me, bring it anyway. They want me to come and share my opposing view.
Where is it?
It's in Montana. Yep.
Yeah.
I will be in Whitehall, Montana in July. It's like the third week of July, the 24th to the 26th, I think. And it's during the day, or during the evening. So they're allowing us all to go like to Yellowstones and then just like hang out and then just do, 3 talks at night. And I'll be there with, I think there's 4 other speakers besides me. And so, Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm bringing an opposing view. The title of my message is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Proto-Evangelium.
That's cute. That's cute.
And so I'm taking the Proto-Evangelium and going on a hitchhiker's guide all the way back through the Bible to Genesis 3:15.
You got to go up to the podium wearing a towel like a sash.
Yes, I sure will. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I've been thinking, do I really want to do this public speaking stuff? I've done it in churches, I've done it at conferences now. And
Yeah,
to
but
be
you're-
perfectly honest,
You're rocking the boat, brother. You're rocking the boat right now.
But here's the thing: like my entire message was focused on overcoming divisions, thinking about others higher than ourselves, and that the quotient or the answer to the division problem in the church is love. It always has been. That is the answer to division. All of the major commandments in the Bible: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said that is the whole of the Old Testament. That is the whole of it. And then when he was in the upper room with his disciples, he said, "This new commandment I give to you, to love one another even as I have loved you."
Yeah.
How does he do it?
Well,
he lays his life down.
He says,
for
"How
them.
else will they know that you're mine?"
Yeah, how will they know? So the answer to division has always been love. And that's one of the things that I'm going to focus on. So if you invite me to speak, guess what I'm going to talk about? I'm just going to keep driving it home and driving it home.
And the ones that
I don't
are
care if
upset-
you're right. You can be right and be an absolute jerk,
It seems like the ones that are the most upset are the ones that want division, that want segregation.
Well, I mean, I guess it sells books. That's
well,
all I know.
and I think too, like there's a root there in like I think Jonathan Haidt would talk about this. Like there's a biological root in our minds to identify safe, unsafe. And so there is like a genetic component to survival of the fittest that is like, you are part of my group or you are not.
Yeah.
And so if you were to translate that into this kind of biological built-in running in the background software, if you would to say, for example, define that as the flesh, quote unquote, like the destruction of the flesh is to overcome through Christ and through our relationship with God, this idea that we are separate and instead accept that we are all one, and then try and find some way to override the amygdala's natural fear response to anyone or anything that could be perceived as a threat to, and if you have any, and I don't know anyone who's not like fucking traumatized by their own childhood. Like I don't know anyone.
Yeah.
And especially some of the people that are the most staunch about, if you not are for me, you're against me. I mean, if you look into their past, I mean, it's like their trauma, their fight, flight, or freeze mechanism is in constant fight mode. And because they don't know how to relax and be at peace and feel safe.
Which is basically all of the full preterists alive today that we seen, because they're right back into that fight or flight mode, because not only did we have those trials and struggles throughout our childhood, we're right back in it again because we got kicked out of our churches, we got segregated from families, we're right back into that mode again.
You're afraid. You feel fear. And so a lot of people want to lash out, but I mean that really is, in my opinion, that's really where the rubber meets the road for the Christian.
Right.
Just if you read 1 Corinthians 13 and you apply it, if you say, let's apply that to my enemy, just try, like take the definition of 1 Corinthians 13 and then apply it to your enemy and see how easy that is. It's not.
Yeah.
That's why I believe that this comes from the Spirit alone. I don't think we can manufacture this on our own.
No.
I really don't. I don't. And the kind of love that Jesus is describing.
Yeah. Has to come from.
It has to come from him.
Because it has to overcome our biological wiring to create separation in tribes.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what I tried to, like when I was saying, a lot of skeptics ask me for empirical evidence to prove the existence of God. And I always say there isn't any. I'm not going to even attempt it. Your apologetics and the arguments, your philosophical and historical and these reasonings for your evidence, all of them are meaningless. The Bible makes it clear. It's by faith. Faith is the evidence of things not seen. It is the substance of things hoped for. The Bible tells you what the evidence is, but we all want to try to find ways to prove it. But we don't need to, nor am I required to prove anything to anybody. And so I just said, my evidence, the evidence that other people could possibly see in me, is that I come from a long line of head busters and butt kickers, And what I mean by that is that my dad will punch you in the mouth before he'll respond. That is, I grew up as a Welch where we fight. We're not going to listen. We're going to whip you. That's the idea. So I have that same thing internally. That's the first thing that pops up. And I love it because like Freud would have called that the id. That's the first response that's ready to rip your throat out, right? And then you've got the ego and the superego. So he's defining it in science or in psychoanalytics that this is what the human being does. Where did that cat come from? In your house?
I just let him. Yeah. He's been in the backyard.
Oh, okay.
He escaped earlier, and I let him stay out because he won't leave the yard.
Ah, who is that?
Rhodey.
Well, he's much happier, I think. I think a lot of his talkings lately and his meowings and stuff
Just
is
him
because he
trying
just
to get
wants
out.
to go outside.
I didn't want him to go out because bird flu's a real thing. I did
Yeah.
find a dead hawk in my yard, an uninjured dead hawk in my yard, red hawk in my yard, just like 2 weeks ago or something.
That's terrifying.
And of course, we've had the confirmed stuff over at Osceola.
Yeah.
But anyway, so and also their flea medication is in the mail. Oh, hey.
Oh, how about that?
But yeah, and for those reasons, I've been trying to limit his outdoor time.
Yeah.
Even though he's a good boy and he doesn't escape, unlike Greg, who is a bad boy and escapes.
And we'll end up in a tree,
Yeah.
way up in a tree.
Yeah, and a tree in somebody else's property.
Yeah.
All right, I'll put you down.
Yeah. And one other thing too, guys, something else that's going on is my debate with Alan Bondar began. Yep. It's on his Unraveler channel.
Ooh.
Yeah. I literally was 5 minutes in and
You're
somebody
a
was
Satanist.
like, you follow a false Christ and you are in a cult. I was like, that was quick. Like I didn't even hardly get my name out, you know, like, but yeah. So, this is the long form debate. It's a conversational debate and, it's titled God in the Matrix. And we're going to be going through.
I like there's an atheist there, and the Christian is like, you're the wrong sort of Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Alan even said, he was like, I don't even know how to define your Christianity. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know. Like, shouldn't you want to be like constantly rescuing me or trying to, I was like, dude, do you know how many emails I get about Andy Bishop? I said that on the first show. I was like, do you know how many emails I get? Like I get constant messages. I got one the other day that was like, how's Andy doing? Is he getting close? And I was like, getting close to what? And they were like, getting close to being a Christian. And I was like, guys, would you please leave me alone? Like, stop.
Yeah, please leave Rick alone. Unfortunately for everybody but me, I'm afraid I'm the one that makes the call on that.
You do.
It's not really. It's a God bless him, as it were. It's not really Rick. Rick doesn't get to make the decision there.
And so
I got distracted because you said Alan Bondar, and I realized I bought his book, and he said he shipped it, and I never got it.
When did he ship it?
He said the book finally came out today. Finally came in. I'll be mailing it out tomorrow. That was Wednesday, April 16th.
You haven't got it yet?
Yeah, I just realized that.
I just got mine 2 days ago. I got mine on Saturday. So you're probably going to get it in the next day or two. I don't know why. He must have snail mailed it.
He used a VPN.
And just so you know, Alan Bondar, if you're listening to this, your taping of boxes with duct tape is ridiculous. Go get some shipping tape, dude.
That's costly.
Man, it's like he looked around the house and he was like, well, I guess I'll use this old gray duct tape. And he put like 55,000 yards on it.
That's a man. That's how man job.
200 mile an hour tape right there, baby.
My goodness. But our debate started and it's going to be very interesting.
I always say long form, how long?
We don't know.
You don't know.
We don't know because what he's doing is he's allowing me to. All right, I'll say it like this. Okay, the reason why we call it God in the Matrix.
Don't let the cat out of the bag yet.
It's not. It's not a cat out of the bag.
All right.
He said it's already on his podcast. Right?
The first episode.
Andy and I actually already had this discussion. We actually started this discussion before we started Hebrews a long time ago.
Yeah, let's sit down.
But it
with
looks
Andy.
like this. It looks like this. Okay. Whenever an atheist looks at me and says, give me empirical evidence for the existence of God, I say there isn't any. But here's why I say that. I say there isn't any from your perspective. Let's build the matrix. Here's my matrix. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Welcome to the matrix. The minute you agree or you enter into that world, you have to stay with that world. You cannot bounce in and out of that world. You have to stay in that world. Let me show you another matrix. The universe was created by the Big Bang. Welcome to the matrix. That is another one. That is one that they can use, what they say can use. By the way, they have not proven it. That is still a theory. And by the way, they just disproved it with the James Webb Telescope. I'm not saying it's not accurate somewhat.
There's what is it? Galaxies are
forming sooner than they thought.
Yeah, that are older than they
and
should be.
A lot of the famous astrophysicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson are saying, look, we're going to have to rewrite the textbooks.
Yep.
But see, that's the joy of science, is that they're always trying to disprove what they say is fact, or at least theory. Like they're always trying to disprove it. So you've entered in the matrix. Now, if you're going to say the universe was started by a Big Bang, or you're going to say God started it, your empirical evidence is based off that. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're trying to prove the existence of the Big Bang or trying to prove the existence of God, your empirical evidence, the data that you've collected, goes back to its proof. The end of story.
Yeah, you can't.
But you can't bounce in and out.
I guess.
Show me where there was a fallacy in what I said.
You can bounce. You can bounce in and out. You're just suggesting it's bad form, I think.
What I'm saying is that science hasn't got to the point where they've proven the beginning of the universe, or if there is.
But that's asking a lot.
Yeah,
but that's asking a lot.
But so
right?
is empirical evidence of God. That's what he's saying.
When you're
it's
asking me for
one,
empirical evidence of God, then is that asking a lot?
Yeah, but the non-existence of the Big Bang doesn't fundamentally alter what we know about other particle physics.
It does not.
Right.
But if I believe
but the non-existence of God fundamentally alters, or the non-existence of the creation by God fundamentally.
I love Arnold Schwarzenegger trying to sneak in, like he's not so stacked. There's no way.
I like how he's got Iceman on his shirt.
Love it.
God rest his soul.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Oh.
So anyway, that's what we're going to be doing, is building on those matrices and kind of bouncing in and out of each other's world and talking about it.
Yeah.
So that, because the idea is he's going to come to me and he's going to say, God condones rape in this section of the Bible. Therefore, is God good? And so whenever I answered him, I said, no. And he was like, oh, what? And I was like, according to your matrix, no. Oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. So what do you mean? I was like, are you ready to enter into my world? Do you want to enter into my world so that I can explain it? Or do you just want to say Yahweh has to be good in every single economy and it has to be according to my modern style of thinking? Or can we go into the ancient texts and look at the surrounding tribes and everything that's going on and the influence of Moses when he wrote it, and how Moses used to influence all kinds of other things in the law.
Preach.
So can you enter into my world?
Yeah, you have to
Let's be fair.
People want to do this black or white, but as, then again, that presupposes univocality, which is that every single word of the Bible was written with one ideology, one end goal in mind.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's just not the case.
It's not even the nature of revelation. Revelation comes over time.
That's progressive.
Well,
exactly.
And it blows my mind when people don't stop. I mean, and I've said this to you before. It's like when Paul is like, look, just because I'm justified in my own mind doesn't mean that I am. And I won't even know until I die and all this shit is laid out, what I was right about and what I was wrong about. I have to stay humble, and I have to say, even though I'm saying stuff doesn't mean I think I'm right. And then he also, when he says, talking about marriage, I'm going to give you a command from the Lord, but now I'm just going to tell you what I think about it.
Yeah.
So when Paul says, I'm just going to tell you what I think about it, do we then suppose that God has changed God's mind? And that God now thinks two things, what God said, which is what Paul says, and then what Paul says he thinks. You know, you have to be willing to let these texts be much more complicated than that black or white, is it this or is it that?
It's extremely complicated.
And just be willing. Look, if we're going to have a debate, then be willing to come into my world.
And
he is. He's been gracious enough to say absolutely.
Especially when he came out of your world.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in our world.
He was in your world and he come out of it. Now he says,
and I was born and raised in his world.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of it.
So
it's going to be great.
So
these are going to be great today.
And I love the guy. I think he's wonderful. He's so funny and he's so smart.
I
like
enjoyed
Alan
interviewing.
a lot.
I enjoyed the time that we interviewed him.
I like it.
But I got people who are like, dude, I just want you to know you are going to burn in hell by talking to him. And it's like,
if you
did
believe
you just
in
say
hell.
that out of your mouth? Yeah.
You
believe in a eternal conscious
you
torment,
gotta start there.
Yeah,
if I don't believe in that, then there's absolutely no fear of it.
Step into my office.
Yeah, come on now.
You're fired. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we'll just close that one off for
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That sounds good. See ya.
Do you think you've had enough time to
This
talk
isn't
about?
the end of the show. This is a back end.
Yeah.
I will say the Big Bang is an extrapolation of fundamental ideas of physics, not itself a fundamental idea of physics. So a better analogy would be like the existence of the atom or something. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The theory itself comes from extrapolating based on other physical laws that are actually much more fundamental to the way we think. That's not important, but it's a thought that occurred to me.
Yeah, and that's fine. The thing is, I don't have a problem with the sciences at all. The only time that I have a problem with the sciences is when everybody, just like Christians do with their theology, is they take it from a point where they'll say, "We're right, you're wrong," you know, the end of story. Well, like for example, don't get mad at me, but just let me say this.
Okay.
There was a lot of people.
I'm already mad.
There was a lot of people that were
It's too
afraid.
late.
They were afraid to take the vaccine during COVID because they felt like it was too fast and it didn't make sense. And they had other professionals that were like, I'm not sure that they've done enough science to know this. There were some people that are like, I'm willing to take the risk because people are dying all over the place. Let's try to stop this. Both of those are good reasons.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
They're good reasons. And the thing is, it got so polarized that they started hating each other. Because, they're like, we're going to die, you're going to kill us. And the other ones are like, no, you're actually injecting us with death. So everybody's afraid and they're mad
Fear,
as hell.
and that's the
That's
bottom
right.
line. Fear separates.
Yeah.
But God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind.
That's right.
Right.
All right, guys. So let's fire this off. We're not doing Daniel. Did you read it and study it? Are you ready, Billy?
Huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are you ready for Daniel?
Oh, yeah.
All right, yeah.
All
We're
of
bringing
it.
it. We're actually going to go on.
He's gonna-
Well, I just assumed that we wasn't since Sarita was here. Because
Yeah,
you
that's-
said that. You're like,
I'm going to wait till she comes next
I
time.
want to fight her. So
I'm just going to bring it.
so it's like,
We're going to go hard in the paint.
Bailey, can you bring your mic in just like another inch or something? Just a touch.
Bring that sucker up to your
Thank
mouth.
you, sir.
Your mouth.
That's what she said.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Oh yeah.
You guys
Hold on a
ready?
minute. I gotta
Oh, yeah,
fan
that's a lot
myself. Having a hot flash
That's a lot better.
over here.
Yeah. That's exactly right. You guys ready?
Yeah, we're going.